Okay, thank you, Ben. Okay, so welcome to the Architectural Review Board meeting for June 17th, 2021. Pursuant to the California Governor's Executive Order N2920, this meeting will be held by virtual teleconference only, with no physical location. Spoken comments via computer will be accepted through the Zoom teleconference meeting. To address the board, go to zoom.us.join. The meeting ID is 965-6189-1491. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, please click Raised Hand. When called, please limit your remarks to the time allotted. Spoken public comments using a smartphone will also be accepted through the Zoom mobile application. To offer comments using a regular phone, call 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 965-6189-1491. When you wish to speak to agenda item, hit *9 on your phone so that we know that you wish to speak. Okay, so for staff, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Thompson is absent. Vice Chair Lee is also absent. Board Member Bolte.
Present.
Board Member Hirsch.
Present.
Board Member Liu. Board Member Liu, I think you're muted.
Thank you. And just for the record, that Board Member Thompson should be arriving later today, and she should join the
I see her.
I just arrived.
I will hand it over to you.
Okay. We have a
Thank
quorum.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apologize. So we just did roll call. So the next item would be oral communications. The public may speak on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
We do have one raised hand, and it's a phone caller with the last 4 digits 3357. Okay, phone caller, if you can please press *6 to speak.
Hi, this is Lorna Noggle and Edith Weiser, and we're calling in remotely. Edith Weiser is my mother, and she resides at 150 Waverly. Just wanted to make our presence known.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have a chance to do public comment when we get to that action item. Thanks.
We have another raised hand from Andy.
By 160 and number 134 Waverly, a property owned by Edith Weiser and Lorna, who you just heard from, also here to speak on the matter of 160.
Great. This for oral communications, it's for items that are not on the agenda. But we'll definitely get to items that are on the agenda.
Okay, with that, we can conclude public comments for oral communication.
Great, thank you. The next item is agenda changes, additions, deletions.
There are none. Good morning. This is Amy French.
Great. Thank you. The next item is city official reports.
Yes, good morning. I'm here, Amy French, Chief Planning Official, representing Jody, who is out on vacation, although I see she is listening in today. I just wanted to report out that the objective standards that the ARB worked so hard on, and again, congrats to the ARB and the ARB ad hoc committee that worked so hard on those for so many meetings. You were very much recognized by the Planning and Transportation Commission for your hard work on the objective standards. And they did pass those and sent them up to the City Council. So August 16th is the targeted date for City Council. These things have a way of moving, but hopefully that's where that stays. So thank you again for your attendance at that meeting, Ozma. I assume that you will want to come to represent as well on at the council meeting. So mark your calendar. Let's see. Vin, did you want to share? I could just say I know that July 1st, we do not have any items at this point, project items that are ready to go to the ARB. So that's a really good meeting to cancel, being that it's right before a holiday. So unless there are objections, that is a thought that we will cancel that meeting. July 15th, we do have one item, and that's coming forward for it's a Stanford Shopping Center item. And we also might consider kicking off the ARB Awards. So this is the every 5-year awards that we postponed last year due to the pandemic. So that's a possible first meeting on the ARB Awards. So maybe you can express your status if you plan to be in town on July 15th, and we can get the wheels in motion on that. I don't know that there's anything else to report. I know those of you who followed what happened at to the Castellea project back in March with the City Council, they remanded it back to the ARB. They have submitted some revisions, revising the project. We are considering coming back towards the end of the summer to the ARB. So that's the plan at this point, working through that. And that's all I have to report at this moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy.
Amy, if I could, I believe I'll be out July 1st, so I appreciate it if we can postpone that meeting altogether.
Yeah, I think cancel is what we're going to do. Cancel it. If I see any hands up to not cancel it, then speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay,
Yeah,
cancel.
we can talk more about the awards date when we discuss item number 4.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll move on to our action items. The first item is public hearing quasi judicial 160 Waverly Street, consideration of a major architectural review to allow the demolition of the existing residential structures, 3 units total, for the construction of 2 new structures containing 3 apartment flats and 6 tuck under parking stalls at grade. I'll hand it over to
So
Sam.
we
Go ahead.
Sam is the planner on this project, and he will be presenting. Thank you, Sam.
Ozma, can I make a disclosure, please, before we start?
Sure, let's go around and do disclosures.
Yeah, I'd like to disclose that I met with the architect where she presented the plans for the project to me. The only thing I learned of interest that's not in the public record is that the architect mentioned she considered a building she did at 515 Webster in Palo Alto to be very similar to this building. And I thought that was of interest. Thank you. I did visit the site as well several times.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Hirsch?
Yes, I also met with the architect on a Zoom and visited the site of the existing building on which is on Webster several times as well, and the site for the new building as well.
Thank you. Board Member Liu?
Great. So I did not meet with the project architect, but I did visit the site, and I am aware of the 515 Webster project, and I did look at photos of that project.
Great, thank you. And I also did not meet with the architect. I did not know about the Webster project, so thank you. I did visit the site, and I did visit the materials board at City Hall. Okay, I'll hand it over to staff. Thanks.
Hi, thank you. Once again, Sam Gutierrez, project planner for 160 Webster. I will start to share my screen if everybody can confirm once it actually shares.
Is there a way to increase your volume, Sam? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry. Are you able to hear me
Yeah,
better
much
now?
better.
Oh, okay. I'll be sure to keep the mic. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see the
You're
screen?
sharing. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, that seemed to lag a little on my end. Okay. So start over. Once again, Sam Gutierrez, project planner here for 160 Waverly. Here we have a screenshot of the project presented before the ARB today. To give the ARB overview and background and context, this is a major architectural review application. The project proposes to demolish the existing development, which contains 3 dwelling units that are detached from one another, and to develop 2 new buildings consisting of 3 dwelling units and a garage with 6 parking spaces. The existing conditions, the project is zoned RM20. I do want to state that there is a typo error in the staff report at the title that Chair Thompson read, that it's listed as RM30 zoning, but it's actually an RM20 zoning, and throughout the report it does say that. So I do apologize for that error. It's a large parcel. 3 detached housing units currently exist, as I mentioned. One of those units is a 2-story, and then the other 2 are single-story. There is a common carport located at the center of the project site. It does have 3 covered parking spaces and 1 uncovered, tucked right next to the carport that exists. To provide some neighborhood context, the neighborhood has a mixture of architectural styles, and also a mixture of zoning districts to go with that mixture of architectural styles. In fact, within 1 block of the project site, there are R1, R2, RM20, and RM30 zoned properties. So this is quite the eclectic mix of zoning districts and architectural styles, as you can see by the photos on the bottom of the screen. The styles range pretty widely. And again, the proposed project was analyzed and reviewed by staff, and the review found that the project is zoning compliant as proposed in terms of lot coverage, FAR, circulation and parking compliant, open space compliant, setback height, and daylight plane compliant. However, we had, in analyzing the project, we looked at, of course, the design. And the project is proposing a modernist design, which is different than the kind of traditional bungalow that exists there now, and has bold rectangular forms, neutral color palette. Materials include stone veneer, brick veneer. They are weathered brick and cement plastered. Some of the design features of the building has recessed windows, so that adds some interest. Headers above the window, which contribute to a little bit of more of a high-end design. Balconies, and there are cornices that are finishing the top parapet to give it some of that more finished and defined look. The design does have some character articulation and is consistent throughout, though it's unclear, however, if the design sufficiently meets ARB findings 2 and 3. Just to remind everyone about ARB finding 2 and any members of the public, ARB finding 2 does speak to the unified and coherent design of a project, creates visual interest for everyone, visitors, and anyone who occupies the site, the community, integrates the existing nature features and contributes positively to historic resources and character, consistent with the context-based design criteria, good transition and scale with the adjacent land uses and land use designations, which is where we had a little bit of trouble with the project in terms of the eclectic mix of land uses and architectural styles. And that's where we seek the ARB's guidance on the project's consistency with the finding number 2. And then to go into finding number 3, the design is of high aesthetic quality using high quality integrated materials. It does seem to have high quality integrated materials, but is the design executing something that is compatible and enhances the surrounding area? Again, it's a little difficult to tell in the sense of the different styles that are here. And this image that you're seeing is taken from the plan set where it shows the proposed project kind of in elevation view, street view, with the immediately adjacent properties on that side of Waverly, or the subject property side of Waverly. And then of course there's the photos again. Moving to parking and circulation. So staff looked at the parking design quite closely. It went through a few iterations, minor tweaks here and there, but at the final iteration, at the plan set that was presented to the ARB, the design was able to meet the parking facility design standards sufficiently to where we would say it's compliant. You know, a part of that compliance comes from these design elements here, where there's these punch throughs in the building at the ground level on the south elevation. This allows for vehicles to properly back up and turn efficiently as they enter and leave. So these openings will remain open permanently. They do not have like garage doors or anything of that nature. They do need to remain there to allow the parking to function, which, you know, from a design aspect as well, does neatly hide the parking and provide enough parking for the site. Moving on to open space, the project has more open space than required via the green open spaces for residents at the center of the site, additional open space behind the rear building, the side yard, landscaping, walkway areas, and both buildings have rooftop terraces and feature balconies for second floor units. The front yard of the site also provides additional open space. In terms of landscaping, the project provides various trees and shrubs, and of the 14 different types of trees and shrubs proposed, 4 are regional indigenous, 6 are drought resistant. Nearly all proposed plants are suitable habitats for pollinators and birds and whatnot. They flower, they have berries of some kind. So then that would be meeting that requirement of the ARB finding. However, the proposed plant selection does appear to meet the 2/3, as I mentioned, but the native planting lacks a little, so staff did recommend some minor tweaks to the planting palette to replace the dogwood trees with the toyon tree, which is a native tree. In place of the swamp myrtle, the California wax myrtle, which is similar, again, though a native tree, might help boost that up. But staff does seeks the ARB thought on the planting and the suggested native replacements in order to sufficiently meet the ARB finding for landscaping. And again, that's just a view of the ARB finding 5 for landscaping. And particularly the planting palette, again, does not propose a great number of native and regional native plants. A big point in the staff report and in the staff's analysis and also led to public comments was the privacy impacts of the project to the adjacent properties, in particular the R1 zone property to the north or the right property if you're looking at the property from the street at 150 Waverly, which actually has a duplex situation where there's 2 single-family homes in an R1 zone lot. So they are listed here as 150 and 134 Waverly. And this diagram is prepared in the staff report as well. Here you could see areas that are identified for each of the single-family homes, the adjacent parcel, and their private yards for each of the homes. And then you see the existing conditions for 160 Waverly, where you'll see the front building, the single-story home, the carport that exists, the two-story home at the center that does have a balcony at the second floor, and then there is a one-story building at the rear. So I did, as disclosed in the staff report, visit the adjacent site at the requests of the neighbors. I did take some context photos, and in the public comments section of the staff report, there are photos provided by the neighbors as well to give context in terms of what they view from their property. And here I tried to superimpose that some arrows to give direction and context. So to explain this, the blue arrow with the gold kind of shadowing here gives you where your view would be. And then the yellow area is giving you what that actual view is from that perspective. So looking from the patio area to the second story building, that's this view and so forth. And again, this is the side yard looking down towards 160 towards the street. This is what you see here, and then of course the center. So this is the view from the 150 Waverly patio area, which functions as the private backyard. And here we have 134 Waverly, again following the same principle for the viewpoints. We could start at the rear. The rear yard does have large trees on the 134 side, but there is a small gap there that could easily be abated potentially with the additional planting. Here in the patio area, we could see at the center of the patio area, the trees do block the view of the existing two-story building right around the center. But then as you move to the front, there is no landscaping, and this is where the existing balcony would overlook at the side yard area for the 134 Waverly residence. And here is the proposed rooftop terrace for each of the buildings. Essentially, I am showing only one rooftop terrace here, but they are mirrored. They are doing the same exact, or not doing, but proposing the same exact floor plan or site plan, if you will, for the terrace. There is an open terrace with the exception of the area for the solar panels at the corner and then for the rooftop access stair, but there will be furniture proposed up there for seating and entertaining. In the plan set, you will see lines of sight. Though this plan set does show tall mature trees, of course, there are none at that level currently, but the project plans do propose privacy screening trees. And moving to that, the screening along the side property lines, as I mentioned, are proposed, but it's unclear if the privacy impacts from the rooftop terraces are fully addressed. So we do seek the ARB's comments and guidance regarding these potential privacy impacts to the adjacent properties. Utilizing your skill and knowledge of any treatments or suggestions and plantings would be greatly appreciated to abate any privacy impacts. And here, this is another point in the staff report in terms of the CEQA and historic analysis. Initially, staff reviewed the project and believed the project would be exempted via a Class 3 exemption, 1503. And we did send out noticing of that in accordance with that. However, later we did discover that dating back in 1997, there is information that the Historic Review Board and the director applied a historic status of a contributing residence to the property. Now, this had to do with an interim ordinance that was in existence at the time that later had a formal ordinance applied in 98, and then that ordinance was actually appealed by the residents via, I believe, a popular vote or some mechanism of that, and then the ordinance was repealed altogether. But because it did have this status established in 1997 at that public hearing, Staff wanted to reassess the CEQA just to be sure, and we are currently conducting a historic resource evaluation to clarify the historic status of the structures on site. One thing that I did want to note is it was not listed as a category 1 through 4 in 1997, and that those designations did exist in 1997. So it's interesting about this contributing residence status. We believe that it may have been a lower status below the category 4. And if Amy might correct me, but I believe a category 4 is not considered to be a historic resource or eligible for the California Register or the national. Is that correct, Amy?
Well, I'll just say that category 4 is a local inventory historic status, and the California Register is a different list of properties. To be eligible for California Register, typically this is more of a significant or major building, such as a category 1 or 2 on our inventory. So yes, that's a roundabout way of saying a category 4 generally is not, but I don't want to put a blanket statement on that, because there could be older homes that rise to, let's say it's the last bungalow in Palo Alto that's a category 4. It would become swiftly higher status.
Thank you for the clarification, Amy. Appreciate it. So with that said, staff adjusted the staff report and is following with due diligence in terms of CEQA and that historic status. And of course, once the evaluation is complete, we will post the findings of that on the project website to inform the public. So moving on to public comments and questions that we received, there was concern regarding the design of the building being very similar to a commercial office building. Privacy impacts, of course, to both yards of 134 and 150 Waverly, sun exposure impacts from the proposed project, the rooftop terraces being very large and potential source of noise, and the proposed setbacks of the project and its proximity to 150 Waverly. Key considerations for the ARB is, again, the proposed design of the project, and if it sufficiently meets ARB findings 2 and 3, the project landscaping meeting ARB finding number 4, and the privacy impacts to the private yards of the adjacent R1 parcel. So the recommendation is for the ARB to consider the project, provide feedback on the applicant's proposal, and to continue to a date uncertain. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Can we hear from the applicant?
Yes, thank you. We also have a presentation, and let me share that screen. One moment.
Great. You have 10 minutes, and we'd like to ask you to state and spell your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Heather Young. It's HeatherYoung. I'm representing the applicant for the proposed project at 160 to 164 Waverly Street. I want to thank Sam for his staff report and overview, also for his assistance and working with us during the development of the project. I'd also like to thank the neighbors, and I apologize, I don't know that I have all the names, but Laura Noble and her mother and Andy, the neighbors at 134 and 150 Waverly. Sam did indicate to us that they had reached out to him, and I'm glad that he had the opportunity to visit the site and take a look and get a better understanding of their concerns. We've also expressed our openness to meeting with them, and hopefully some of the information we share will move towards easing or addressing some of their concerns. So when we look at the site, I think Sam made some really strong points. This is a transitional area. The site is here in the larger Palo Alto map. This is our downtown area. The purple is CDC. The brown are the multifamily areas, and the yellow are the single family areas. And when we look at our site in particular, it is on the edge of that R1 RM20 zone. And this split of Waverly is not just evident in the zoning, it's very evident in the mix of style and mass and color and form that is evident existing on the site and likely to evolve over the coming years, with this portion of the site area adjacent being RM20. We are not the first and will definitely not be the last multifamily project coming to this neighborhood. These are additional images of the context locally, and I really appreciate Sam highlighting the diversity that currently exists. There is no single dominant form, mass, color, or style. The range is one of the largest I've seen in a residential area. There are a number of elements that we have picked up on. One of them is this idea of the front porch, the front terrace on the second floor. Here you see it massed differently, a rather rectangular primary form with a ground floor extension. Other properties also have more rectangular orthogonal forms. So we didn't feel like we were out of the norm or understandably massed approach for the site. Again, these are the two properties immediately to the left and the right as you look at this very long, narrow 50-foot site. A lot of the properties in the area are 50 feet wide. The challenge for how to develop them as multifamily properties is not going to go away with our current zoning. There is on the single family zoning, the daylight plane begins and continues. On the multifamily properties, the daylight plane stops at 10 feet and goes vertical before continuing to its maximum height limit. For RM20, that's a 30-foot height. For R1, that's a 33-foot height. So these two properties could be developed in the future to have even taller structures than are proposed here or exist already in the neighborhood. But as Sam mentioned, this project as proposed is fully code compliant. The other thing you'll notice here is that the property to the left is pushing into the front setback. It also pushes into the side setback, which is not unusual. A number of properties were developed before these ordinances and code requirements were brought into application. The single family home also has a intrusion into the daylight plane. The project that was mentioned as a reference is at 519, 515 Webster. It's a few short blocks away. It's an RM30 site, very similar in its diversity of existing context. We worked with the property owners to develop this project, which was completed in 2018. And it also has a lower scale single family home on one side. University is on the left, and that's an area where original single family 1- and 2-story homes on University were redeveloped as office. This project is also a multifamily. It's a 2-family multifamily. The 3rd floor and the 2nd floor are developed as 3-bedroom, 3-bath flats. The ground floor is developed as two-car garages, and then each of the flats has a home office that is on the ground floor. Not dissimilar to today, you have a single family home and you build a detached from the main structure, home office or ADU. In this case, it's just a little home office, which I've heard from the property owners was very, very much appreciated during the last year of our shelter in place. The property owners really love this design, and the tenant feedback has been very positive. The opportunity for the single floor flat with light and ventilation on all four sides, the opportunities to have that second floor terrace that looks out to the street, and then the upper roof terrace for the third floor unit. They've been very pleased with that design. And that's what they requested we look at when we came to the Waverly site. As I mentioned, the Waverly site is very narrow, 50 feet by 250 feet, very challenging to do parking on. And what our primary goal was in that regard was not to replicate a central parking area open to the sky, but to create tuck under parking and reclaim as much of the site as possible for landscape and open space. You can see here that the property just on the south here is a single continuous element. We wanted very much to break this project into two masses to again open up the site and minimize the footprint. And as Sam mentioned, the open space is much higher than current or required, and the site coverage is less than what's currently there. The concept with Waverly here, again, the ground floor parking, unit 160, unit 162, unit 164. And again, you're seeing the mass of what's adjacent and on the multifamily side. So this is a transition between this continuous bar to the multiple structures in the residential zones. The site plan here, you can see the ground floor is at the 20-foot setback. The second floor steps back an additional 10 feet, creating that front terrace and also pushing the second floor facade back as it transitions in mass and scale to the existing single family. There's a garage door entry here. You go through the breezeway with the trash recycling and bike parking to the 6 at-grade parking spaces, ground floor unit at the rear and 2 units on the second floor. Here you can see how circulation is achieved. The 2 yellow spaces here are for the second floor rear unit. They park, go out the door, walk down the side walkway through a gate, and then they have a little private area to get to their elevator vestibule that takes them to the second floor. There's also an egress stair. The 2 center spaces on either side of the front building elevator vestibule allow you to park, go into that vestibule. That door also allows for anyone coming to visit or from the street to enter the elevator vestibule to go up to the second floor. There's also an egress stair coming down for that unit. The ground floor rear unit parks here. They walk out through the open garage, go through a gate, and then they are in their ground floor yard. They have a front yard and a backyard, and you get to their ground floor unit.
Ms. Young?
Yes.
Your 10 minutes are up.
I apologize.
I'll give you a couple more minutes just to wrap up your presentation. Is that all right?
Thank you very much. I'll go faster. Actually, I'm just going to skip to the privacy because, well, you can see here the building in context, but and the materials. I'm glad you had a chance to go and look at the material board. We really love this brick. It's warm, neutral, varied. We ordered 50 bricks from the company and they sent us the variety. We were really excited about the variety. The engineered stone at the front, stucco as you move to the rear of the building, and then high quality pavers, high quality materials, which was important to us. The larger brick facades, as you can see, come down to the ground. There's a subtle Flemish bond every 13th row. The windows are punched and again of high quality with the brick headers. The sill of the smaller windows is at 5'6". The sill of the larger windows is at 3'0". We have bedrooms that have egress requirements, so we have to have the lower sills. You're seeing that open garage, the stone veneer here, the front terrace. I think you're getting a sense of the quality of the materials and I hope it translates the thoughtfulness of the development of the facades and the articulation of them. But the real issue here is privacy. And what you're seeing here, this is the elevation that faces 134, 150 Waverly. You're seeing the dotted in locations of the new trees that we're proposing. And that's important. And you can see here, these are the new trees that are more flourished. The existing trees are drawn as open circles. And I really want to focus on this diagram to address the residents' comments. The green trees are the new ones, the yellow are the existing, and these are the windows on the ground floor of the rear property and the windows on the ground floor of the front property. The 5-foot the larger vertical windows with the 3-foot sill on the second floor are where we have these arrows. And you can see here's the view line and it misses the window and there's a large tree if you were to try and look towards the window. Similarly here, there are 2 yellow trees blocking this view to a wall. This window is blocked by trees. This window is also blocked by a new tree, and this window looks to a blank wall. So we've reinforced the existing privacy screen that's there. When you go to the front building, this window looks to a blank wall and a tree. This window, we realized we could do a better job here. And we've talked to the landscape architect and we know we can do a better job in increasing the privacy here. And we're going to work with her to create more view blocking trees. These 2 windows look at blank walls. If you look at the section, you'll see that if you do come up to the interior here or even to the roof terrace, you can only see a roof, and that's if you can see through the trees. So we actually were feeling like we had begun to do a really good job respecting privacy, but clearly the neighbors had some concerns, and we do need to work with staff and with the neighbors to address those. Sorry, I appreciate the extra time. I did just want to close with this image, which is showing the 2 completed buildings and the new tree planting in context with the existing multifamily and the existing single family. We do think that this is a transitional location at the edge. We feel like we've done a pretty solid job addressing the owner's desire to use this 3-bedroom, 3-bath flat model to open up the site to bring more landscape to the area, to bring building materials that are high quality and low maintenance, be part of the larger varied architectural character in the neighborhood, and hopefully to respect the privacy of our adjacent neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alrighty, we'll move on to public comment. I know that we had two members of the public that had raised their hands at the beginning.
Yes, we currently have two raised hands. Let's give them just a couple more seconds to see if anyone else wants to raise a hand. And then let's also get the timer as well. Okay, so our first speaker will be the phone caller with the last four digits 3357, and then followed by Andy. A phone caller, if you can please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Ish. No, I'm not gonna, hold on. You guys be quiet. I'm gonna be talking pretty soon.
Hi, you're on.
Hi, thank you for taking our call. We appreciate the Architectural Review Board listening to our comments and concerns. We realize we cannot change the eclectic mix of the housing area. We do understand that. I do want to point out that I do want to point out that I don't recall Nancy Young or any of her peers reaching out to us. And the only thing we remember is a sign posted in their front yard. But so I'll proceed from here. So Mom and I and the rest of the family feel it's unfortunate that working class homes from about 100 years ago are no longer valued in Palo Alto, unless, of course, as mentioned before, it's the last bungalow, and then maybe something will be done. The craftsmanship and quaint architecture and built-ins and hardwood floors of 160 are a thing of the past and not as valuable as a huge modern structure. As Nancy pointed out, that she feels her building is quite small as relatively as what can be placed there. We feel that having the rooftop patio is an immense hindrance. There is no way we can determine what kind of people will live there. Will they be an active family? Will they be a quiet programmer or student who spends their time in solitude? Or will they be a rambunctious group enjoying parties, gathering with friends and co-workers or clients? That although there'll be trees, it'll take a while for them to grow. But I think peering right down into our buildings, there will be noise. There is a vestibule inside these buildings for an elevator to go up. However, I think most visitors won't realize that that's there, and they will actively be using the walkway that peers directly into 150 and 134. So you do, I'm sure, we can't see, we're calling, from, we have no Wi-Fi, but my mom's letter says it all. She's very concerned about the reduced privacy for both the facilities, the reduced sunlight, and the view of the skylight. She'll be in a fishbowl, increased noise level from the rooftop patio, and the availability of street parking. Currently, people do park on the street, and sometimes just visiting her, I find it difficult to locate where I'm going to place my car. You're allowing 2 vehicles per apartment. However, I'm sure it sounds like it is within your code, but I foresee that many people will be parking on the street, and it will be difficult to find parking.
Ms. Lauren?
The primary entrance
Ms.
peering
Lauren?
into the property will benefit from the park-like yards. If you've ever had a chance to look at those yards, there are 30 years of growth. When my parents originally bought those homes, thistles were about 6 feet high. Now they're a park, and 134 really benefits from family and friend visiting, although during COVID that wasn't possible. And I anticipate it'll be another 100 years before we'll be isolated like we have. So I believe the rooftop patio is, for us, it's a big eyesore.
Ms. Lauren, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, your 3 minutes are complete. Could I ask you to state and spell your name for the record as well?
Okay, my name is Lorna Naugle. That's LORNA Naugle. And my mother's here. I'll have her tell you her name and her spelling. Just a moment. Say your name and spelling.
My name is Edith Weiser, Weiser.
Thank you. Thank you. And then will Edith be speaking as well, or were you speaking on?
We
both
were
of your
speaking
minutes?
as a unit.
Okay. Okay. If you'd like 30 more seconds to finish your thoughts.
So never, there's no doubt in our mind that this proposed project will go through. It will be a nuisance, and she will have no choice but to live with the day-to-day noise, dust, and disturbance of a new construction to make way for 2 towering buildings that will eventually reduce her privacy and convert her home and 134's home into a fishbowl. That we'd like to consider all the proposals on the letter that she set forth on June 9th. And we thank you for listening to our views.
Thank you, Ms. Noble.
Our next speaker is Andy.
Hi, thank you, and thanks for your time. My name's Andy Pergam. I live at 134 Waverly, the property just adjoining on the northwest side.
Could you please spell your name for the record?
Of course, I'm sorry. It's Andy. Last name is Pergam, Pergam.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I want to express my thanks for your time, and also my appreciation for the city staff who prepared that thorough report and visited the property and incorporated our comments and photos. And I think we want to be clear that we're generally supportive of the right to build on one's property and support additional multifamily housing. So we're not concerned with that. We just think it needs to be done thoughtfully in privacy protective ways and harmoniously with existing neighbors. So our primary concerns, as Sam mentioned, revolve around privacy for me, my wife, and our 6-year-old child. There are 3, I think, primary areas or issues for us. One, we find the roof decks of these proposed buildings particularly problematic. We use the backyard and side patio extensively. And as currently designed, we expect people to be peering down into our yard and patio from what is essentially a 3rd story of this building. And there appear to be few, if any, noise mitigation efforts on the roof. We're not aware of any other roof decks like this in the neighborhood. Not in the other multi-unit buildings and not in single family homes. We haven't seen any of that in presentations. We don't think this is the right precedent to set. I think it's quite different to overlook university or to overlook a church than it is to overlook a single family home. So we're asking that the roof party decks be revisited and removed. Similarly, we're concerned about the landings and stairs that will be feet away from our patio. In the multi-unit building that's to our rear, there's a similar stairway and landing, which is used by tenants as outdoor space. And so we hear every conversation. They can watch all the movement in our backyard. We ask you to reconsider positioning those doors on the south side facing another multi-unit building where that impact would be less pronounced. Lastly, we're concerned about sightlines from the 2nd story window of 164. It does face our house directly, and I'd note that I think there were some errors in the image that Ms. Young presented, and I'm happy to help correct those, but where one of those arrows is pointing to the corner of our house, that's our daughter's bedroom window, which did not show up on the drawing, and there's a direct view from that arrow. So we do want to make sure those are revisited. These are also much closer than the windows of the existing building. We agree with the staff report. There are not enough tall trees in the landscape plans to protect our privacy. Lastly, I'm sorry, that drawing also did not include the sliding glass door that is our dining room, and we believe another window as well was not presented in there. Finally, I would just invite you all and sort of extend the same courtesy to you all to visit the property to see it for yourself as we have to the city. from our backyard and from our patio, so that you can experience it. It's hard to do that over Zoom and over pictures, but happy to make arrangements for that as well to help you make an informed decision. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay,
Do we have
Chair
anyone-
Thompson, that concludes public comments for this item.
All right, thank you. And then typically we allow the applicant to respond if they would like to.
Thank you.
Sorry, 1 second. I think Sam has his hand raised really quick.
Oh, sorry, I'm still on mute. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that I did visit the site, as I mentioned in the report, and during that site visit, I did inform the neighbors that Ms. Young and her project architects did extend an offer to meet with the neighbors and kind of explain how that would be facilitated via Zoom or another way, or if they felt more comfortable, I was willing to facilitate that meeting as well. So I just want to clarify that point.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. And then yes, Ms. Young, you have, I think we allow 10 minutes. For
Wow. Thank you. And thank you, Sam, for that clarification. It sounds like there was a misunderstanding with Lorna and her mother about our desire and to meet with them. Thank you, Mr. Pergam, for letting us know about the missing window and the sliding glass door on your side elevation. We'd very much like to have the opportunity to meet with you at the site and take a look at those and work with you to find ways to revise the planting plan along that shared property line to better facilitate the privacy, not just from the windows on the second floor, but also from the stair that you mentioned that comes down. The project at 519 Webster, the property owners have told us that the tenants really do use the elevators. They don't use the exterior stairs that are there. So I can't obviously guarantee that the stairs won't get used. And as you know, they are required for egress. But I'd like to think that the opportunity for people to hang out on those stairs is very minimal, especially because there is a roof terrace outdoor space that's available to the 2 second floor tenants. And the diagram that we showed, and actually I'll just share screen again really quickly because that really is the biggest component here. Sorry, I know there's a way to go backwards here, but that's not it. I apologize. I don't seem to be able to. Here we go. Thank you. Okay. So it sounds like there are some missing windows here, which we can absolutely work on. There's some challenges with views from this portion of the stair we can absolutely work on. We recognize a similar challenge for this outdoor patio space that we need to do a better job creating privacy screening in this area, and that can definitely be achieved. The roof terraces, again, the views from the roof terraces, I don't anticipate as being a challenge here. The noise issue, I think staff can advise us. It is a multifamily building, and as a multifamily building, is there the opportunity for there to, and maybe Amy French knows this as well, are there noise ordinances associated with multifamily projects such that a certain decibel level of noise is prohibited after a certain time of day? and that's a question for staff actually. But I think those are the two primary concerns that the neighbors are raising. The other issue that was brought up regarding the solar exposure. Again, there is a two-story structure. Actually, this is a good view. There is a two-story structure currently about the middle of the site. And this is a different massing, obviously, but the massing is fully compliant with the city's requirements regarding the daylight plane and the maximum building height. And we hope that that will be clearly evidenced here. Thank you. That's all I have at this time. But if there are any questions that the board has, we'd be happy to help out.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we can close the public hearing and ask the board if they have any questions of staff or of the applicant. Are there any questions?
I have a series of questions, Ozma, if that's okay, or if anybody else wants to go first.
Go ahead, Board Member Balti.
Thank you. To the staff, could you give me a comparative size to the houses that are existing on the property now, maybe square footage or number of bedrooms? I'd like to understand what the replacement housing is going to be relative to the existing housing.
Sure. In terms of the square footage, I may need a moment to look that up exactly. But in terms of the capacity, if you will, the bedrooms, it is comparable. That is something that we did investigate with the applicant during the first round of review. We did want to confirm that we had compliance with SB 330 and making sure that any replacement homes that are being proposed are at minimum equivalent to the existing homes or greater than. So overall, it's either the same or greater than, because there are 3 to 3 units. I believe one of the units is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and then there's another that's a 1-bedroom and multiple baths. I'm trying to look up my notes here.
I wonder, Sam, if it's possible to get back to us later with the square footage difference.
Yes. If I just have a few moments, I could verify all that.
We'll go on. The next question I have is for probably for Amy French on staff regarding the historic review. My understanding is that the building is now being sent to an outside historic review consultant for determination if it's considered historic in Palo Alto. And I'd like to know what happens if that determination is made that it is historic. What is the outcome potentially?
Well, if it is made, a determination is made that it's eligible for the California Register, then it becomes a CEQA issue. If it is not determined California Register, there is no, there's no pathway that's identified to put it on the local inventory. So, so that would be kind of the end of it, is the California. If it's not California Register eligible, then it is no longer a CEQA issue.
Okay, if it is a CEQA issue, what does that mean? What does the applicant then have to do to continue with this project?
Well, there needs to be a environmental analysis, determination through the environmental review process.
Determination of what? The impact of the project on?
Yes, on the resource, if it is determined eligible for California Register.
Okay, but the impact of the project is to destroy the resource. So what does that mean as far
Correct.
as the review? I mean,
well, what it means is looking to see what kind of, mitigation is difficult in those circumstances because it's hard to mitigate demolition, but yeah, that's what I'll say. And environmental review is a different process than an exempt project.
Okay, thank you very much. Lastly, to staff, I'd like to know if this project is also subject to the individual review process that is done on single-family homes. I can't remember exactly, but I know that there's some standard, a single-family home adjacent to an RM zone does not have to do IR review relative to the adjacency of the higher zoning, or how does that work? Maybe Sam or Amy?
Well, single-family homes in the RM zone do need to do an individual review if they are adjacent to single-family homes. So that, you know, this is not a single-family home next to a single-family home.
So the
Sam,
IR
if you have something to add, please do.
Sure. As Amy was mentioning, if there was a single family use on the property, then it would be subject to the IR guidelines. But in this case, of course, we're following through with the multifamily design standards, because that's what's being proposed as the land use is multifamily, which is 3 units or more. So it doesn't go through the IR process, but it does have a privacy process in that the multifamily performance standards do talk about privacy. I believe that's mentioned in the staff report. So even though it's not the IR process, it still has an IR-esque in terms of privacy.
And are those IR standards something that the ARB is expected to uphold for this parcel, even though it doesn't go through that process? I think we've done that in the past. That's what I'm asking.
That I do not recall exactly. I believe because the code, the municipal code, doesn't speak to the IR for the multifamily use, though certainly you can pull from that because the performance standards aren't as specific as the IR guidelines. So perhaps that could be used as a template or an advisory guidance document. But again, it's not explicitly stated in the multifamily zoning code language that you have to follow the IR guidelines for a multifamily project.
The property, however, to the right of this property, as seen from the street, is in the R1 zone.
Mm-hmm.
So development on that property would be required to go through the IR process, even parts of that building facing this project. Is that correct?
Yes, so it would go through the IR process if they were to develop a 2-story home. So we're talking about the 150 site, 150 Waverly. If they don't develop a 2-story home, then there is no IR process. If they were to develop a 2-story home, we would apply the IR process to the adjacent, further down the way, if you will, to the right home, which is a single-family home. But the IR privacy guidelines wouldn't necessarily be applied to the adjacent multifamily.
Okay, so they're
And I will.
Go ahead, Amy.
I will just clarify something here, because when we're talking about multifamily, we're talking about 3 or more homes. Right. If it were a duplex on this project site, that would be subject to the individual review guidelines. So you may be recalling another project somehow that had 2 units and maybe some commercial, I don't know. That would require analysis of IR if it was next to a single family, but not a 3 unit. Yeah,
exactly. A duplex in a multifamily would apply in the IR, not a triplex or more. That's
I guess I'm trying to find out if the neighbor to the right redevelops, do they have to follow the same privacy standards that this applicant does, or the IR standards vis-a-vis the 2 properties next to each other?
They would.
The IR standards.
Correct.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to go through the ARB process at all.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. My last question is for the applicant regarding the building itself. Architect Young, you have a stone finish base of the building facing the street with 12 by 24 limestone or manufactured stone pieces. It seems that wraps the corner going back on each side about 10 feet. But does that same material and finish carry all the way down the side of the building where the surface is planar, or is it is there a change in material there?
There's a change in material from the engineered stone to a stucco plaster finish.
How far back is that from that corner?
It's about 10'2". It's the same depth as the balcony, the terrace on the ground floor.
I see, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Sure.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from any other board members? Nope. Okay.
If anybody wanted to hear anything about noise on the board, you can ask me. I have some sections of the noise ordinance handy.
Ozma, can I ask another question, please?
Go ahead.
To the staff, could you please explain the noise ordinance implications for this project?
Yes, I would be happy to. The noise ordinance does apply residential property noise limits, and it's not specific. It's applied to all residential property in Palo Alto. So we have construction noise requirements or code sections, and we have ongoing noise sections just operationally. So what they are is that a noise level more than 6 dB above the local ambient is the limit. So it can't go to 6 dB above the local ambient at any point outside of the property plane on an ongoing basis. And so that's what that is. For construction, there are hours of construction, but there's no statement in the residential property noise limits about hours of noise. However, the police do enforce for the noise, if there's loud, instantaneous, or continuous noise after a certain time of the evening. I don't have that handy, but hopefully that answers some of the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board to hear board feedback. Let's start with board member Liu.
Okay, so thank you, Heather, for the presentation and the drawings. That was very clear and very easy to understand. I think this is actually an interesting project. It's different than the other 3-unit projects that we've seen in downtown and in south of Forest. We've seen several of those of projects that have like 3 houses on like one narrow, deep lot, and I think that those projects, like the massing, is more compatible with the neighbors than the project that you're proposing. However, they have less landscape. Like to get the parking to work, usually there's no landscaping at all along the side yards. So much of it is given over to the driveway that you don't really have any space to get large trees. And the open space the private open space that is there is usually very small, like 10 or 11 feet. So it's just a patio. So I think this is a really interesting project proposal. I think that I'm generally in the same position as staff, is that I am struggling with the findings 2 and 3. My thought is that you could maybe get there by lowering the height of the building slightly. On the site plan, I've got a couple concerns. So one is just like the utilities near the front walk. I think like you've got like a standpipe and whatnot. I've looked at some of the other recent ARB projects. So like we have a 6-unit project on 405 Kirtner, and it was just like a mess with regard to the utilities. And I hope that we can do that. There are ways of screening them. There's a project at 557 Lytton, which is like 4 units, that actually did a really good job of screening all the utilities by using several layers of landscape and low walls to hide everything. But I see that you're trying to hide the trash behind the wall, and I do see a place for electric meters and stuff. So I do see that you're working on that. But I do think that the board needs to pay more attention to those things. On the trash, I do have a concern too that the trash area is open to is visible from the front door of 150 Waverly. I do see you've got like gates and stuff shown there, but I don't really see any. I don't have any details yet on that. So I do want to look for that in the future. On the front wall, I have some concerns about the stone. I think with that, like the large format pattern that you're showing, like I would expect it to be deep. So like if you're showing like a 12 by 24 stone tile, I would expect that to be like at least 12 inches deep. And I suppose that what you're proposing may be like, you know, like, I don't know, like about 7 or 8 inches deep. So I think it may look, it might look too fake, is I guess where I'm going. So either try to make it thicker or maybe consider a different material, or like a different size, if that's possible. I know those manufactured stones are limited. On the, I think the next item I will mention, but I think that it's not, for me, it's not a code issue. But I guess the question I have is, would it be possible to flip the back unit, which is 164 on the second floor? Does it make any sense to flip the unit so that the balcony and living area face the backyard? So I understand there are efficiencies of stacking plans, and there are acoustic issues. You don't want somebody's living room above the neighbor's bedrooms. But like if you assume that some of those things can be resolved, it seems to me be better for your proposed project. I think this has come up before on other multifamily projects, and we don't really have, the city doesn't have privacy requirements internal to a project. So I'm not enforcing that, but I just want to throw that out there that, you know, maybe there's a better solution. On landscape, it seems like there were some revisions to try to include more native plants, and I think that that's looking good. I think the staff is proposing 2 substitutions on the trees. I think I don't support the first one, which is replacing the evergreen dogwoods with the toyon. And I think my main objection to that is the height. I think the toyon is more of a shrub tree, you know, somewhat smaller. There is a local native dogwood, but it's deciduous, so that might not work for screening. So I think we need to do a little bit more work on that one. I think that the other substitution is fine by me. I'm also thinking that just for the project, for the residents of this project, that those sidewalkways could be better, like in terms of landscape. So maybe they're so narrow, like 6 feet is really narrow. So if you have a 4-foot walk and 2 foot of landscape, you don't have a lot of space. It seems like that should be nicer. It should be as nice as possible. So I don't know what that means. It could be like stained fences. It could be like on my old house in Palo Alto. We had a raised planter right along the fence, and that just helped give it scale, and it helped bring the plants closer to eye level. And yeah, or maybe consider vines. There are some vines like star jasmine or like the violet trumpet vine that do well, but they need support. You know, you have to do some sort of wires or something on the fence. But at the moment, I'm thinking like the entrances those entrance walkways aren't nice enough yet. Okay, so that's where I am on this one. I think you're close, but I think I agree with like this. I think the staff is. I think this could be a little bit better. On the roof decks, I have not made a determination yet. I do understand that those are going to be controversial items. So I will weigh in on that later if we do a second round. But thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Board Member Hirsch. Board Member Hirsch, you're on mute.
Got it.
Now we can hear you.
I said, thank you, Sam. I thought your presentation, as usual, is wonderfully detailed, and Amy follow up on all of those items. And that it mentions issues concerning the neighbors in a very sensitive way. My comments here are going to be mostly about the facade. There are many parts about this proposal that are really quite ingenious, I think, especially access to the rear units, the incredible tight parking scheme and how you managed to make it work. The unit planning itself, you know, with the 3 bedrooms and bathrooms and facilities within, which we never talk much about, but you've done an excellent job of planning these units on the interior. What concerns me actually, though, however, and I mentioned it in our meeting, was that it doesn't translate into a quality design, most importantly on the street facade. I'd expressed this concern in our review and have been thinking about it ever since. The rear forms facing the courtyards are simple elevations, symmetrical or asymmetrical, but traditional facades with equality proportions and a consistent use of the facade materials. The front, however, is a different element entirely. The expression of the building on a podium, while the base, a punctured wall like a stage set for the volume beyond, the upper floor is just totally mundane and undistinguished. The choice of a white cornice line lacks, I think, an opportunity to do something different, not just end it with a simple cornice treatment the way you have. If a brick wall was a real dimension rather than a sort of paste on brick, despite the fact that it has all the texture you've described, it might look more like a real brick building with something on the cornice line that was more meaningful. Even if it was a simpler element on the side walls, the front really has to distinguish itself somehow. So just carrying a white cornice around the building, I don't think is a quality ending to this kind of expression. To me, it's a kind of on the front, it turns into a totally minimalist expression without any personality. I'm imagining sort of Joseph Albers' sort of way of doing something rather than Louis Kahn, where brick detailing and quality of a brick looking building, after all, is really a tradition that should be respected. The planning critique, though, is as mentioned by Sam and the neighbors, is the major issue. And so the issues of privacy might not really work all that well. You have, after all, staircases going on the side of the building, in the rear building, and somewhere along the way with lower trees, it just doesn't seem like it might work. I was sort of wondering if you hadn't flipped the whole rear unit a little differently than Alex described, but turned it so that the actual rear upper unit was accessed from the opposite side in planning. Then you would put that access stair to the side where there's more of a multiple dwelling versus an individual dwelling. So I'm not suggesting that you specifically do that, but it seemed like one way of solving the problem. And coming back to the front unit, then you have this walkway all along the side. And it seems to me you lose an opportunity here. And in this attempt to put the garbage in the front and where it can be accessed from it by everybody, the upper units, as you mentioned, the elevator is the only way of access really to the upper floor, unless you take what are egress access staircases. Why not actually provide a stair that's within that front garbage area that gets you up to the balcony and as an entry to the front building? And why not allow that, therefore, to allow you to access the building and create different openings in the front of the building and do more with the front of the building so that it has a scale to it? It's a really, really dull entry facade. So that's my major concern. I do have some minor ones, and that is that I think, and I mentioned it, that the stair to the center backyard from upstairs down is kind of a meaningless one. I lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn, spent a lot of time gardening the rear yard, but never actually used it. So with all of these other areas, a front porch, a rooftop, why would you need to provide access to that rear court? It doesn't seem programmatically that makes any sense at all. Perhaps it's just a piece of landscaping which could be seen from above, from the bedroom of the front unit, and doesn't need to be accessed. More importantly, I think access to the upper floor by stair is something you really must work on. It was mentioned visitors are going to come down what is really one of the dullest elevations with a stucco facade on the side of the building to an entry to the elevator and then elevator up. It's a complicated movement pattern for that front unit, and I don't see why you can't redesign somehow the location of the garbage in the front and find a way to create a much stronger elevation through the podium up to the upstairs into an entry and animate the front of the building. I find that the actual side elevations, some are good, especially if they seem all to be brick structures with a random kind of window patterning, which, as you noted, kind of reflects the interior use. That seems to work okay, but I like it when it's a brick wall, and I'm not so keen on it when it's a stucco wall. I don't understand the reason for a crossover balcony from one of the rooms to the front living room area. In the front building, it's just a canopy. In the back building, it's a crossover balcony. What is the sense of that? Is that actually different use than a bedroom? It is shown as a bedroom. Is it really an office and therefore it has access? I'm sorry, maybe I should have asked the question earlier, but Heather, you could answer that at some point if you get an opportunity. And I mentioned to you when we discussed the plan earlier that I'm not so keen on the idea of it being an open shaft to the rooftop. It causes endless kind of problems with leaves flying around and getting into the staircase down, potential rain issues on the interior. I can't imagine that it isn't better to roof over that piece and find a way to make that work in square footage so that that is a way of getting up to the roof without having to have it an open to the sky situation. Leave it up to Alex on the ideas of plantings. He's always better at that than I am. But the front yard seems to be not considered. And the sod yard that is in the front adjacent to the access to the lower area of the adjacent building, there really doesn't seem to me to be room for trees on that side for them to root properly. That's a landscape issue, so I leave it up to you to determine if it really will work. Roof decks and the privacy of roof decks, my golly, we've got so many different outdoor areas here, you know, and they're being used effectively by each of the units. So I don't quite see that it's a requirement to have those rooftops, but I don't have a major objection to it. And I think, as Amy's mentioned, the issue really is whether they obey the sound issue, the sound requirements of the code. But again, just coming back to it, I know you can do a better job on the facade in the front. And I can't accept the project the way it's presented and hope that you'll come back with a better look to this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hirsch. Board Member Bolte.
Thank you, everybody. I am generally supportive of the comments Alex and David have made. I don't want to dwell on those issues, but I think they're pointing out some real concerns. Sam, have we had a chance to answer the question about how many square feet are being exchanged for this new building?
Yes. So you did ask a question about the bedroom. So the information that I had in my notes from this and the conversations with the applicant and reviewing the project initially was that there is 2 bedrooms in the front unit, 3 bedrooms in the middle, and 2 bedrooms in the rear unit. And of course, all of the units here are proposing 3 bedrooms. And then the square footage differences, the front building that's existing now, the bungalow-esque building, is approximately 1,500 square feet. The middle 2-story building is approximately 1,280 square feet. And then the rear unit that exists now is approximately 1,000 square feet.
3,700. Okay, so that's 3,700 square feet of living space that's being changed now for this is 4,300 or so.
Correct.
And that 4,300, does that include the parking on this building?
No, because it is a multifamily dwelling. So then we do not count the parking the same way we would count it for the single family residential.
Okay, so it's fair to say that we're adding, this new project adds 2 additional bedrooms and about 800 square feet of more space, give or take. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. That would be fair. Conditioned living space.
Just big picture looking at it.
Right.
So I'll start my comment then with observing that I think the parking may well pass muster with the transportation department, but I don't think it actually works. You have to be a very skilled driver to navigate this parking space, get your vehicles in and out. I think that combined with the fact that we're really getting very similar sized residential buildings points out to me a very serious critique of the current zoning code. And I want to use this opportunity to point that out. There should be an ability to put more housing on this property than just 3 units. And it's just a travesty that we insist on driving the architect to create 6 full parking spaces that are really not functional. And we're really not getting no more people are going to live here than before. We're not doing anything for the real issues we have in our town. And it's not the architect's fault, it's not the owner's fault, it's the way our code is written. And we're not doing anything about that. And this is a very crystal clear example to me of what's going on and we should be doing differently. So it doesn't affect this project and it doesn't affect my support for this project, but I just want to make sure everybody sees that front and center. With that, I am struggling with review board findings number 2 and 3. I find the compatibility issue significant and problematic. I think that Architect Young, you have 12-foot floor-to-floor heights on both stories, making over 10 feet of living space inside, plus a 42-inch parapet on the front finished in a very solid, heavy material. That makes for a very tall building, a very tall, aggressively tall, flat facade building. And I think that really hurts the sense of compatibility in the neighborhood. And I think it's quite possible to lower this down and it will make a big difference in how it looks. So I think that would go a long way towards improving the compatibility with the neighborhood. I agree that it's an eclectic neighborhood and there is no one style and there's lots of examples of more boxy structures, but there is something about this that isn't quite doing it. I know it when I see it and it doesn't look that residential given the residential character of the rest of the neighborhood. So maybe some of David's comments about the facade treatment would help. I think what Alex pointed out, and I agree that just the basic height of it is problematic. I'll speak then to David and Alex are both pointing out that the base material that wraps around the front, it's essentially designed to be appearing like a podium of some kind. But I would fear that it's not going to be thick enough and the detailing of that manufactured stone around the corners is fairly tricky. And the fact that it only goes back a short distance, you can actually see where it joins into the plain stucco wall. All of those things, in addition to the way the openings allow you to see the brick building behind it in a very clear way, I believe will just leave this to look sort of fake and plastered on, which is the exact opposite effect that you should have with a podium type construction. I'm not sure if it's an issue of concept, that it just isn't the right, maybe better is to simplify and have the brick come down and call it a brick building. Or maybe it's an issue of detailing how to make the effect what you want. But I do think that it's not working right now. I'll move on then. I have significant concerns about the privacy impacts. I was asking the questions about the individual review process because I believe the individual review process would be much more stringent. At least in our experience working on residential properties, you really cannot have a view into somebody else's backyard of any kind. And counting on a tree to block it is something that's generally not accepted at the IR level. I understand that this is multifamily and we're trying to look for a different goal, but I think the way you have these side walkways with very direct views into people's yards is concerning and problematic. And I think the roof deck even more so. Allows a tremendous view, not just in the immediate neighbors, but anybody else around the area can be seen from this. And if you step back a second, the privacy concerns are really ones of fairness. What are you allowed to see into your neighbor's property versus other people allowed to see into yours? And Palo Alto, in my opinion, has gone towards a fairly strict level of privacy concern. And that's been upheld even recently by city council in several cases where people with second floor windows looking across a 50-foot backyard have been prohibited from impacting their neighbor's privacy. That again is in an R1 neighborhood, which is slightly different, but you're adjoining an R1 neighborhood. You're looking into R1 neighborhoods here. And I think it's something that needs to be taken a lot more seriously, Heather, that you really shouldn't be able to look into people's yards. Occasionally when you're passing by, that kind of thing is where we're letting it stretch, but this is doing so much more than that. I think if you really want a roof deck up on top, what you need to do is some sort of treatment at the edges that prevents people from getting close enough to the edge that they can actually look over and see down. The idea of being up on the roof in and of itself is fine, in my opinion. That said, the city council has struggled mightily with allowing rooftop decks and such on commercial buildings in downtown districts. I suspect this would not be well received by them. This two very large rooftop decks like this with really no mitigation efforts aside from maybe the angles of the tree branches right next to it, you're really going to be able to see quite a ways from this. So that's really of a concern to me. So those are my two big questions, is that right now I cannot make finding number 2 regarding the compatibility of the structure, and the same thing regarding the privacy. I just think it's got too great an impact on the neighborhood and the privacy of the neighborhood right now. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Board Member Bolte. Okay, I guess it's my turn. So thanks to staff and thank you to the applicant for your presentation. Really interesting feedback from the board. I was actually really curious to hear everybody's feedback. I kind of agree on some notes and disagree on others, which I think is maybe expected for something eclectic. The staff report says that this is a modernist design with minimal details. I don't quite agree. I think this is, I feel like a modernist design doesn't use brick in this way. It doesn't have cornices in this way. It doesn't have that kind of detail. And I really think that this is something different. And I don't know that we should be referring it to that way. Like this is something that's using newer materials in a different way. It has a rustic element to it, certainly, which I think is what prevents it from being a modernist item. In general, in terms of the facade and the design, my biggest issue was not really with the materials, actually. I thought the materials were okay. I do think the comments from the other board members about the treatment of it being on a thin wall can be dangerous. It can look fake potentially. But I think my main issue with the facade is something Board Member Hirsch mentioned, is that the ground floor entry isn't really like a very residential entry. It's a carport and it's trash. And I think those things don't really belong on the front. I feel like trash, enclosures or something that people are able to tuck on the side or in the back, and it's expected that you will roll your trash out. Like you will make that extra, whatever it is, 3-minute walk, so that your front is actually something really welcoming and really nice. And I think I'm really glad you showed the Webster project, which I didn't know, but what I noticed was that office on the ground floor is what gives you that welcoming ground floor interest. You have eyes on the road, eyes on the street, which makes it feel safe. And I think the thing that's lacking here in this design is that that's not really there. Your ground floor porch is not really a ground floor porch. So humans won't really want to spend any time there. And so I think some reshuffling of the program to make the entry something really special is important. And I think it will benefit your project a lot. Similarly, I think with some of the details that wrap the corner like that, the rendering that we're all seeing here. Oh, wait, hold on, sorry. Let me turn off my background. This rendering that we're seeing here, that was the front, we can see this detail of the turning of the corner. And I think that sort of is what ruins the illusion. Where we turn the corner, the cornice turns and it turns for 10 feet and then it stops and then you can see the plaster and it goes on. And so, sorry, Board Member Hirsch, you're not on mute anymore.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. So I think those details like that, where you can see that change, if there can be something more smoother in terms of those transitions, it can help. In terms of compatibility with the community, it is an eclectic, as Sam mentioned, and I'm all about adding something new and something different. I think that's what makes a neighborhood rich. There's nothing quite in the neighborhood that has this level of texture and detail in terms of what you've provided here. And maybe this is where I differ from the board. I'm okay with that. I think it's kind of nice that there's something different here. And I sort of support an applicant's ability to sort of express something different. So I might be alone on that one, but that's okay. For the landscaping, I support Board Member Liu's notes, and in general, also the staff's notes about adding more landscaping. For the parking, it is kind of a strange thing. to have that carport open all the time. I understand the constraints, and I'm sort of torn with does this actually work? It seems like a lot of thought was put into it, but I do worry that in practice it may not actually execute, just because of how complex it is. So yeah, it might be something worth reconsidering. And then let's see, for the privacy issue, it's kind of a weird conversation with privacy because here we are wanting to support more housing. And the reality is that when you have more housing, your privacy goes down. And that's what happens. And you can, I'm really appreciative that the applicant seems really open and receptive to hearing the neighbors' comments. And I think as much as possible, we should try and mitigate those concerns as much as possible, because it's so important to make sure that the neighborhood feels comfortable here. So I would support, the applicant checking out those extra windows and adding more screening. Potentially there's other methods of screening that can help that may not be landscape related. So yeah, so there, I think in summary, finding 2 and 3 are, I think with a few edits, I think I could make them actually. I do think that the design is on its way, and I think it's really exciting. There's some cool stuff happening. So those are all my comments. Are there any other comments from the board in terms of responding to what other people have said, or maybe thoughts on a second round? Board Member Liu? Nope. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Just sort of chime in on other people's comments, kind of a second round. Ozma, I thought you discussed materials very appropriately just now. And yes, the more you look at the front elevation, the more you see a problem with the podium construction as continuing with white material and down the side street. It really doesn't come together as a proper podium. And I would like to reemphasize that I don't think just a white cornice works on this building. And since you can do more with the brick material, I would really like you to consider using real brick. I don't know why it isn't possible to use real brick here. There was no kind of rationale for choosing the thin bricks, which, although they have the texture, they don't really have that depth and wonderful feeling that a real brick has. The proper kind of grouting, and depth and edges and real variety of texture, not just a thin piece.
If I may, Board Member Hirsch, from what I understand, at least in California for seismic zones, brick is really problematic. And really? So, yeah, so a lot of new construction that desires that warmth and feel that brick gives, like for example, the new Pixar offices, they built it in type 3, and then they add the veneer and they have to do these tiebacks, and it's so a
more complicated, more expensive, etc. Well, I'm a New Yorker and I love my brick.
But it's a nice feel. It's a nice feel. And I think that's partially, go ahead.
But still, maybe it would be possible to do something with a cornice that isn't just the regular kind of paint on thin white element that it seems to be. And since we're kind of making it look like a brick building, because you're using this kind of brick, then you could continue the look as well. But I want to also reinforce what you did say about what Ozma, you said about the way in which the front could work by moving the garbage somewhere else and using that as an opportunity to perhaps to provide a stair up and a relationship to the front deck and a way of accessing the top unit which would then affect the facade of the upper unit as well, is a real opportunity here. I think that, access to buildings when you go down a small alleyway to a door on the side isn't a very welcoming way of entering a building. And you can certainly do a better job with this building that way to make this front of the building be a welcoming building. As you mentioned, the other one has those qualities here. Why not work on this one as well, as you suggested? Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, can someone make a motion?
I will make a motion that we continue this project to a date uncertain.
Second that.
Motion by Lou, seconded by Hirsch. Vin, can we do a roll call? I mean, a vote call, or sorry, whatever it's called. Vin, are you there?
Yeah, sorry about that. My computer was having some issues. Board Member Bolte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lee is absent. Board Member Liu,
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, this motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. I just wanted to give the applicant a quick second to ask any questions of us before I close this.
Thank you, Chair. I think the only question I have is if the board members would be open to follow-ups individually to see if our revisions begin to address their concerns, which are varied. And I don't anticipate each of you being 100% satisfied. There's some very distinct views of the neighborhood. But if you're open to follow-up conversations, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Okay, all right. I think we should take a 5-minute break because we've been here for 2 hours. So let's come back at 10:30. Let's say 10:33. Sound good? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Poochie. We're taking a break. Bye. Booger. You know what? If it's vacuuming, I'll never be able to work. Yeah, vacuum down here. No, it won't work. I don't think it'll work.
Are we all back?
Hi, Ozma.
Hey.
Just checking on everybody here. A lot of work going on. I'm supposed to be cutting out at 11:30 if that's possible.
We'll try. Let's try for it. Yeah, and sorry, I wanted to just, sorry, we're gonna restart the meeting. I just wanted to make a quick note on the last item, question from Architect Young, if she could meet with us. I realized I didn't really give the board a chance to answer or answer myself, but I think in general, I think it's up to the board members' discretion if they'd like to do that. And my understanding is that while this project is under review, any kind of meeting with the architect just has to be made public record. And I don't know if there's other board members that'd like to add to that before we move on.
Well, I think my recollection is that between hearings, it's sort of discouraged. Like it's okay to have a meeting before the first hearing, but that between two hearings is considered kind of like, you know, lobbying.
Okay.
Although
that might be
I'm not
right.
Sure, there may not be a specific rule against doing that. And then I think also too, I think remember on Castellea, I think the city attorney was reminding us to do, if you have a private meeting, that you had to do notes and submit them to the city.
That's good to know. Do you have any, do you have anything to add, Amy, on that?
Yeah, I agree with Alex's recollection that generally between meetings is not a good time to have conversations with an applicant. If it's a prelim, that's a different scenario because it's not an official application that's been filed. It's a study session.
Okay.
But disclosure is always important at the start of a meeting.
Okay, great. If Sam could communicate that to the applicant, I think that would be great. Okay, all right, let's move on. Let's try to get Board Member Balte out of here at 11:30. Okay, so our next item is quasi-judicial 3241 Park Boulevard, recommendation on a major architectural review to demolish an existing 4,501 square foot building and construct a new 7,861 square foot office building. Staff.
So, hello, introducing who he has been here before, of course, Garrett Sauls, to present. He is the project planner for this project.
Good morning, board members. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So please let me know when you're able to view it.
We are able to view it.
Thank you. All right, so this project today before you is for 3241 Park Boulevard. This project was reviewed previously by the ARB on December 3rd of last year, where they provided some comments on so the site planning organization, as well as some sort of minor comments to modifications they could be, the applicant could be doing to the exterior of the building. Can you still see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you. All right, so the image that you see in front of you here is the actual perspective the applicant has in their plan set for 3241 Park Boulevard. As was mentioned in the project description, this is no longer a renovation of an existing building, but instead a demolition of an existing automotive service use building, previously the Atkins Body Shop. And what the applicant is proposing to do is construct, 2 floors, two-floor office building, which will, within the GN district, will most likely be a research and development type of use. So to kind of give a brief summary of the project again, it's going to be about 7,861 square feet in terms of total R&D office square footage space. There are above grade and below grade parking lift structures that are going to be provided. 30 spaces will be provided on site, and 33 are technically provided based on how the current regulation, our current parking regulations are established for accessible stalls and how the loading stall or access pathway stall can be counted doubly towards parking requirements. There can be 5 bike parking spaces, 4 long-term and 1 short-term. The applicant has updated their canopy document, or their tree planting scheme, so that they'll provide 52% shading over the parking area over 15 years. And to recollect from previous discussions, the soil investigation was provided, and it's likely that a recommendation to require a vapor mitigation system is included in the conditions of approval for this site to try to deal with the presence of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, in the ground. Overall, this project is going to be, staff has provided an environmental analysis of the project and has determined that it would be able to file underneath a class 3 or 32 exemption. So the previous feedback that the ARB had provided was about breaking up the solid wall which faces the foundation to try to study the glass wall projection at the front, to try to provide some additional context images, which you'll be able to see in your plans that were provided to you in the packet, to potentially increase the amount of London plane trees or utilize them as a street tree rather than the previous tree that they had provided, to try to give greater context or connection to the existing landscape context and tree planting scheme along Park Boulevard, to investigate whether they're going to be able to retain the building with an addition, which the applicant has decided that they're going to demolish the entirety of the building that exists there today, to incorporate operable windows, and to better integrate the design, the pedestrian design, so that it's more friendly within the rear court, as well as pedestrian oriented and open and inviting along the front end of the site, of the tree, of the facility. So here we have what was the previous plans that was submitted. So the comments primarily were touching along this front end side where my mouse cursor is moving around, this right-hand side, which faces the substation, and this rear court area here, as well as the landscape trees or canopy coverage that would be provided for the site. So overall, the applicant has provided additional landscaping within this site, which you see in the highlighted areas. There's an additional tree placement here. As a result of the conversations we've had regarding the updated parking requirements, they've actually reduced 1 surface parking space and increased landscaping as a result of that, and have provided extended landscape islands along this side that you see here to better capture a greater canopy over this actual parking space in order for them to satisfy their parking or their canopy coverage requirements. This is the previous elevation, which faces towards the substation on the right-hand side of the property if you're facing it. So you can see it's mostly just a flat wall that previously had provided for cement plaster. Now what they're doing is they're breaking up some of this massing to indicate or provide additional reveal to the actual sections of the building, as well as introducing 2 windows along this side to try to break up that massing. The applicant did identify, and it's identified in the staff report, that they were intending to keep this exterior second floor glass canopy. They feel that it's appropriate given the context of the design. One thing to notice that previous comments by the ARB had been to potentially extend this roof line over this canopy space here. If that were to be done, this space would count towards gross floor area for the site. It would not exceed or put the project beyond any sort of environmental metric that would trigger it from being one thing to the next, or an exemption to needing a mitigated negative declaration, and it wouldn't exceed the allowable floor area for the site either, if that were to be done. Here you have the previous tree planting schedule, where the board had commented that it seemed as though the integration of this vine cable canopy was incorporated towards the total canopy coverage for the site. And so the applicant has removed that in terms of their submittal. They've introduced an additional tree within the space, and as I mentioned before, extended this landscape island here to allow for these larger trees, which are going to be these London planes, which you see also along the street tree concept here, to provide a greater canopy over that parking area, such that they'd now be able to satisfy the 50% shading requirement that our code has. Here you can see the interior. If you're standing inside and looking towards the building, inside the property and looking towards the building, you'll see that this is the area that we were looking at in terms of potentially increasing operable windows or including operable windows. And you can see here in the plan sets as well that they have included operable windows on the second floor here. Additionally, you can see what the previous pedestrian frontage was kind of oriented to. The ARB had commented on how this screen wall around here would be uninviting and distracting from the project in terms of its pedestrian scale and orientation. What you can see now that the applicant has done is identified in the project description as well in the response to these comments is to try to create perforations almost between these panels so that it doesn't seem necessarily as one solid mass when you're walking by it, but there are interruptions between it that provide visibility into the space. So you can see also here that they provided an interior refuge kind of detail, which kind of showcases what that might look like on the inside of the building as well. And they provided some additional pedestrian oriented design or concepts to try to demonstrate the openness and accessibility of this space. So this image that you see right here indicates what was the previous concept for this vine cable canopy underneath this space. The ARB had commented on how the space didn't necessarily seem very pedestrian oriented or inviting and unsafe. One thing that has maintained between this has been the introduction of these festoon lights that you can see in this image here. Now, in terms of the concept and what you're seeing, you see that there's going to be this new tree planted here and creates this bulb that helps to slow, kind of create traffic calming almost internally within the space. And there's additional introductions in terms of the solid wall where there would be additional floor to ceiling almost windows, basically to create a little bit more openness, a little bit more introduction of just air and visibility to this space. So another comment that the board members had provided was that the solar shade fabric that the applicant provided in their demonstration appeared to be too light, or sorry, dark, compared to what the graphic images were trying to demonstrate. You can also see this image here in the image above that we just showed, where the rendering provided showed this fabric to be a bit lighter, and the previous image was shown, the previous material sample had actually shown it to be darker. So this updated sample is provided and is on the material board that was posted at the City Hall. So their images indicate more so now or are better connected to what the material shade fabric is going to be for this site. So staff believes that the applicant has properly addressed those items. And lastly, staff is looking for a recommendation by the ARB to recommend approval of the project. Staff believes overall that the applicant has properly addressed the comments that the ARB has previously provided for this application, and any additional feedback on this project would be welcome. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I forgot to do disclosures before you began. Can we do that really quick? Any disclosures? Go ahead, Board Member Balte.
I disclosed that I visited the site.
Thank you. Board Member Hirsch.
No disclosures, actually, except looking at the drawings carefully.
Thank you. Board Member Liu.
No disclosures.
Thank you. And I'll disclose that I looked at the materials board at City Hall and I visited the site. Thank you. Go ahead. Let's hear from the applicant.
Hi, my name is Jeff Galbraith with Hayes Group Architects. I'd like to thank Garrett for that fantastic presentation and for all of his help getting us through the process to this point. It's great to be back with you to talk again.
Mr. Galbraith, could I ask you to state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Jeff, Jeff, Galbraith, Galbraith.
Thank you. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, I feel like Garrett really covered everything that we were going to cover, did a great job. And so I think rather than just going through and repeating and being, aware of your time, are there items that you'd like me to cover that Garrett didn't cover, or specific questions you have for me?
Sure. Okay. So the applicant is sort of foregoing their 10 minutes.
Well,
we can go to questions.
hopefully rather than forego, I mean, maybe if there's something you'd like me to focus on that I can use that time for.
Are there any requests by members of the board? I'm not seeing any. I have one question that I was going to save until the end.
Okay.
I can go ahead and ask it. I think there was a note about Garrett mentioned there was an ARB comment about extending the canopy. There was a choice not to do that, and then also the framing to keep that as is. Can you discuss the thoughts of the presentation that we have in front of us?
Yeah, absolutely. So tell you what, so I'll share my screen. Let's see here. And let me cycle through and just find an image that shows that. Can you see my screen there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I believe we're talking about this portion of the building here. And one of the concepts essential to the design is the notion of these planes. You know, in some cases it's a roof plane that cantilevers out. In some cases it's a canopy element that might have infill or might not. And they're planes that move in different directions, responding to the context and responding to the massing of the building. And actually, if I go to the elevation view, you can see maybe a little bit better. So the roof form all the way at the top of the second floor, it's very directional. It comes off of the service bar that's along the sort of side property line against the substation and reaches out towards the second floor outdoor terrace, and then it's continued by a lower canopy underneath that. Whereas the steel structure that reaches out on the second floor towards the street is really expressing a continuation and an outreach of the building interior towards the street instead. And so we have these two perpendicular motions that are out of plane with each other. And I think one thing I want to make sure is clear is that those steel members, there is no occupied floor area in between them. They are gestural members that are expressive and that help break down, prevent the architecture from feeling boxy, but feeling more open and interleaved. And so that's really just open space that's captured in between there. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant?
Well, it's an unusual way to go about it, Osma, but Jeff, could you address the purpose behind the private open space at the ground level below the metal frames you were just talking about?
Yeah, so we're creating two different outdoor spaces and we have a desire to have them feel distinct. They offer two different types of spaces to be in. The space on the left that's more open is more public, a little bit more inviting and intended to be open. Whereas the space on the right, what we call the refuge garden, is intended to be a little bit more of a contemplative space, a place that you might feel a little bit more private and not as exposed to view. I think we did take the board's comments to heart from our last review and agree that it felt too closed. And I think we've taken it from a place where it felt like it was a space that you're not supposed to be able to see into and maybe not supposed to know is there, and now made it a space where, while it still feels distinct and private, you have enough glimpse into it, especially I think as you're moving past it, right? And your eye will track through those openings. You'll get a sense that there's something in there that you're allowed to know about, but that you won't fully experience until you've walked into that space. I think it also creates a little bit more buffer and separation between the interior users in that space than they would get in the other interior space, right behind the other outdoor space. It creates variety.
Osma, do you want us to discuss that kind of thing now, or should I be just holding back?
No, yeah, I think this is really just a questions item.
Jeff, maybe you should just walk through the presentation. I know we wanted to be sensitive of time, but I think that might be a little bit more standard.
Okay, happy to do that. Okay, so this is the front elevation, of course, facing 3241 Park. And again, this is the previous site plan that we submitted last time. And with the changes, which of course, as you can see, are pretty minor. The building footprint really didn't change at all. The changes really were cosmetic to the exterior and some site modifications. As Garrett mentioned, we've extended the planting, basically reduced the asphalt down, eliminated it where it didn't have to be asphalt, which adjusts the ratio, right, between planted area and asphalt area, and allowed us to increase our percentage of coverage for shading and get over that threshold. We've also changed the tree species that were around the parking area to London Plane, as well as those out on the street frontage. We've enhanced the rear court, which previously felt closed off and sort of detached, a separated space without much visibility, right, or really any visibility into it from this portion of the interior. And so we've moved the planting to the facade, enlivening it. We've added windows. We probably did the most to break that wall down and make it feel like it's inviting and part of the space. And then added this bulb out with the tree to, again, create a little bit of a buffer there. And there does remain a curb that separates the vehicular driving area from the walkway. So there is still that separation there as well. Operable windows have been added all along this west-facing facade. The refuge, as well as we just discussed, was opened up. Previously, the panels were about 4 feet wide with about an inch in between them. And now they're maybe half that width, with gaps that are probably closer to 4 inches in between them. So a lot more visibility through that. And again, that view from the interior of the refuge space. And again, here you can see the canopy steel floating overhead. And again, there's no floor area there above. The wall facing the substation, so roughly 100-foot long wall, previously a very regular plaster facade. We've broken that down with 2 moves. The first major move is really the introduction of these vertical stripes that create a break in the plaster. So the finish would transition from plaster to a metal panel at the lower level. This dash line is actually the height of the fence that's next door. So you'll see just what's above it. And the windows actually align very well with the top landing of the stairs that are interior to the space. So they create a nice punctuation on the interior and also create eyes on that facade. And then secondarily, we've taken the plaster and we've introduced a little bit more rhythm into the reveals. So we now have a minor reveal and a major reveal, which helps break these down a little bit more and create a little more syncopation across that facade. Here's the view as you can see it. Now, if we had done this view a year ago before all the street trees were cut down, it would look really different. But that's how it is today. That's a view back looking from the other direction. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Are there any members of the, that's it for the applicant's presentation, right?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
Chair Thompson, we do not have any raised hands right now.
I'm going to give the board members one last chance to ask questions of the applicant before we close it up. I just had one last one. Can you explain what material it is that is the shading element for that piece of steel it's extending on? There's a piece of shading.
Yeah, so the actual shades, so that they're roll down shades that were concealed in metal boxes that would be up, basically just sort of concealed around the outside edge of the upper steel. You can see very faintly some wires that reach down from the upper steel to the lower steel, and those create guidelines for the fabric to pull down. So it is an exterior shade cloth, which pulls down.
I'm asking about the horizontal element.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one? This one on the left above the garden space?
No, is there a horizontal thing that fills in the steel
No, there is not. On the right above the refuge space, there is not. It is open.
above? What about the one above it?
It is open as well. A portion of it overlaps the roof above. So there's a soffit there that has wood finish on the underside of it, but the steel cantilever's free of that roof edge.
Can you go to a different rendering view?
Yeah, so here's an exterior elevation. And you can see here, I'll try and draw on the screen if you're able to see it. You know, the interior of the building is somewhere back here, right? And so you've got these steel members that cantilever out past the interior. And this space here is open to the sky.
That's not the case in one of the renderings that we're seeing. But I guess, so the view from Park Boulevard looking northwest.
Let's see.
Right there.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is the edge of that other roof, the upper roof.
That's the edge of the roof, and
is
it
right
doesn't.
there.
It
So
doesn't
that-
extend. Okay, so that's okay.
Yeah, it's set back, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 feet, something like that. So the steel projects past.
Interesting. In all the renderings, it looks filled, but I guess it must just be a trick of the
Yeah,
perspective.
good point. That vantage point makes it a little hard to distinguish those two planes.
And there's no intention to fill that at all. It's gonna be
Correct.
open.
I think another item you could probably look at is in the plan set on page A51. There's a wall section at the south garden detail that's provided on the right-hand side of that page, where it talks, you know, it just showcases a little bit also the exterior shade fabric mechanism, and then it also just tries to kind of do a cut to showcase the that roof portion underneath those cantilevered steel pieces or steel
not-
frame.
It's not really dimensioned, but what did you say? How much does that overlap into
So
the
it-
open space?
Yeah, it overlaps less than 50% in terms of like the total area. You can also see,
Yeah,
I think,
let's see. Let me see if we can see it on a plan.
Yeah, it does say C plan.
I don't have a dimension there.
Okay, yeah, I guess I would just want to get an idea of how much, what the dimension is that it extends.
Yep.
And how much it overlaps.
So here you can get a pretty good idea of it here. So let's see. This doorway is about a 3-foot wide doorway here. So you've got about another 3-foot, 3'6" to the glass. Then that glass is recessed about, let's say, 4 feet behind the face of that facade. And then the steel beams cantilever about another 5 feet past that.
Thank you. All right. That's it for my questions. Thank you so much. I'll bring it back to the board. Unless I'm forgetting a step in between. I'll let board member Balte speak first.
Thank you, Ozma. Thank you, everybody, staff and the Hayes Group for the nice presentation. This is an exciting and attractive building. I think it fits in well with the area. I'd like to start, however, again, being a gadfly here, this is part of the Ventura area that's supposed to be designated for housing. And again, not for the applicant's issue or even staff's. We're getting an office building because we haven't got our act together what we really want in this town, which I think is housing, and this would be a site where it could accommodate that. Okay, that's out of the way. I'm happy now with the parking spot in the back. I think the windows and additional detailing make that work pretty well. I also appreciate the additional texture and windows on the elevation facing the power station. I think that will work pretty well also. My only suggestion might be to make a slightly larger reveal on the minor reveal between plaster pieces. The major one is fairly heavy. The minor one, I think, is going to get lost. But honestly, it's hard to tell with these renderings, and I'm sure these architects will get that one right. So I don't think there's any need to see that again. What's been bugging me is this private patio space at the street, and I think it's a conceptual issue I have, I guess, that we're fencing off an area that's right next to the sidewalk, and I'd rather see that not be quite fenced off. So if I had my brothers, I'd rather see it be treated the way the other open patio is and be more open. I don't think it's a matter of the spacing in the panels. It still feels private and closed off, and I have a problem with that. That's my only issue, however. I can vote to support the project either way, but I'm curious to see what my colleagues on the board think about that one issue. Overall, it's a great design. It's going to look really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Balte. Board Member Hirsch.
There's an old Scottish expression, and you've managed to succeed at it. You've made sow's ear into a beautiful thing here. And I'm just absolutely delighted in the way in which you've resolved the planes of the roof line and the structural element that projects out, and that you've solved the issue of, I think, of the walkway outside, which Peter mentioned in the previous safety issue by the extra tree. Thank you for the windows and the ventilation, which I think is kind of wonderful in the Palo Alto here with the air, perhaps not like today, but like other days, most other days. The planes are just fantastic the way they work, you know. Knowing only a little bit about your other work here, I think this is an incredible piece of geometry and architecture, and I'm really rather in love with it. It's not too precious, and the detailing of it has been thought through excellently on all sides, including taking care of the difficult parking issue on a very tight site. And the additional landscaping is, of course, nice to imagine that the canopy will provide shade throughout the parking area. That you, I think, have solved the issue of the relationship to the mechanical equipment next door by creating a very simple backdrop, because the mechanical equipment itself is kind of interesting in that lot. So it's a kind of a sculptural element against a very simple background of this building. And it's very nice to have a little light coming through from that side into the staircase as well. Where can I find a fault? I would like to say I sort of disagree with Peter on the private gardens. There should be some place for private outdoor usages. You've made the other one kind of more transparent. So this one, by making this a little bit transparent, I think it's less of a obstruction in the neighborhood. In fact, it's kind of a nice element to see these planes rising out of the ground. So I'm hard pressed to find anything that I dislike. And I would definitely like to see this move on to construction. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Board Member Hirsch. Board Member Liu.
So yes, thank you for the revisions. I do think that the project needs all the findings. So I do have several issues though, partly with the staff report and also with the plan set. So I think that the major issue for me is that that almost all of the text on landscape sheets was not printed. So they're mostly blank. I did review the previous set of drawings, and not that much has changed on that. So I think that, so I'm not so worried about it, but I think that we should follow through on the landscape sheets.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Board Member Liu, yeah, you need to mute.
Okay, sorry. So I think my first So the big thing for me is that the text on the landscape sheets is missing. The second item is that there is like 1 to 2 foot candles of light spilling into the creek. So if there's a way of shielding that better, or maybe eliminating one of the light poles in the back corner, I think that might help reduce the light spill. With regard to the findings and the, oh, wait, there's one more thing. On the staff report, attachment C, which is the zoning table. I think, so for Garrett, I think on the floor area, so like there's a 50% maximum floor area, right? And then in the existing and proposed sections, you have like 44% and like 76% listed. And I think what's confusing is that those percentages, you're saying 44% of the allowable. But if you're just reading, like if you're a casual member of the public looking at it, it looks like they're exceeding the floor area. So I just think we should pay attention to that kind of stuff, because like I understand what you're doing. But it's not clear to members of the public who may not even really understand the concept of floor area very well. You know, it looks off. And then also too, under the findings, I think the last time I think the board was in disagreement about my objection to the prime habitat language in the findings. And I just wanted to point out to the other board members that there are new elements in our comp plan. So there's goal N3, which is conservation of both naturalized and channelized creeks and riparian areas as open space amenities, natural habitat areas, and elements of community design. So that's the goal. And then the policy is N3.1. All creeks are valuable resources for natural habitats, connectivity, community design, and flood control. And they need different conservation and enhancement strategies. So if we compare this to like the first proposal in the prelim, where they were building very close to the creek, I think we have like a huge improvement along the creek, and you have native plants like the western redwood, which is native to Palo Alto, as well as the London Plains, and I think that makes it much more open and attractive to the street. So I think that meets the comp plan goal, but there's actually no mention of this in the staff report, which I think is problematic. Also, I think the second item that I have with regard to the staff report is that in our pedestrian and bicycle plan, the city is hoping to build some sort of pedestrian and bike bridge somewhere in there between Matadero Creek and Margarita Street. And there's no mention of it whatsoever. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to, that project, if it ever happens, may not impact this particular site, but I think that we should at least have a mention of it so that we understand the larger comp plan goals for this area. And I just find it very troubling that we don't even mention it. There isn't even a sentence about it in the staff report. So that's all that I have. I can support the project. I think, I don't know what we do about the blank landscape sheets, like how that gets resolved. But I will put that out there for the rest of the board. But thank you to the Hayes Group.
Thanks, Board Member Lee. Some really good catches there. I also noticed that the landscape plans didn't have, oh, sorry, go ahead. Do you want to respond to Board Member Liu's stuff, Garrett?
Yeah, sorry, could you give maybe some examples of the sheets that it sounds like they might not have printed properly? Maybe I might be able
blank
to share my screen and show those to you. That might help address maybe some of the issues that I guess it sounds like you might have been having.
Okay, well, so there are, in the sets, right, I think we've got sheet L1.3, which is images. And then after that, I have two sheets that are blank, except for like a key plan. And there are no sheet numbers on them.
Yeah, no sheet numbers.
And then after that, there is a colored landscape plan with no text.
Okay, yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen then so that we can maybe at least capture that information.
You see like the tables are all blank.
Interesting. That's weird. It must have been a printing error because the documents that I have obviously incorporate that information. So let me go ahead and share my screen and at least capture that information, in the public record at the moment. So, so starting from L1, this is what we talk about their landscape design intent. Is that information included on that?
Garrett, I'm seeing the same stuff as Alex. My drawing set is incomplete on the landscaping in an erratic way, like he's describing. I assumed it was just a printing problem, but
the sheet L.1.
Why don't you just flash through the pages that you have and make those part of the record?
Sure. So this information.
Garrett, could you increase the percentage maybe for folks to be able to see it a little better?
Want me to zoom in? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Yeah. So this information is also on the project webpage with the latest cycle that should be uploaded up there. So, as if whatever printing error came out, it resulted in this information not being able to be present. So L1.0 talks about their landscape design intent, where they talk about what their proposal is with their landscape plan. So in here they talk about this kind of boulevard sidewalk and refuge they're creating with this pedestrian office court kind of blended space. They have this rooftop terrace shown up here as well, and this kind of canopy diagrammatic provided here to try to capture what that information is within that space. So moving from this page, the following page provides again kind of a diagrammatic scheme of what the landscaping is trying to provide. On the right hand side, they show the case this legend, which talks about a myriad of things with site materials and features and elements that they're providing within this space. So again, you see this kind of refuge space, pedestrian and private refuge space, as well as you have the street tree context with these London planes here, showcasing again that they're going to be trying to integrate this continuity within Park Boulevard, as the board had commented on previously. You can again see how this canopy is going to unfold within this space in the future, which is our anticipated 15-year timeline for this coverage area. This image here again tries to showcase a little bit more of that information and talks more so directly about this upstairs or this second floor balcony space. So this page, which is L1.2 in your packet, talks about this, in their site plan legend, talks about, again, the materials that they're going to be providing, site materials and these elements that they're going to be incorporating onto this second floor area. So you see this kind of, refuge space that's going to be open air to, the sky with this kind of trellis canopy over the space and the landscape planters around it to, make it feel a little bit more inviting and comfortable. Moving on to L1.3, this is the materials images which they're providing to just kind of showcase what are they going to be using on the site or throughout the site. So you see, different kind of pieces of concrete that they're going to be utilizing within the space. And additionally, they're showcasing things, like their tables and chairs that they're going to be trying to utilize, their overhead structure and the steel wall, and this kind of planting or suspended planting screen, and other sort of pedestrian or occupant amenities that they're going to be incorporating into the design. So on L1.4, they're trying to provide some perspective images of what this space is going to look like when it's more fully developed or fully grown out. So you see this kind of pedestrian oriented scale facing towards the building. We have these trees that'll be more mature, in about 10 to 15 years time. What that space is going to try and emulate or look like basically once everything has been developed and kind of built out. So it sounds like these are some images that might have been, not included in terms of whatever the printing was going on with. So
Is that trellis like a green screen?
on the right hand,
Yeah, is that like a grid? What does that look like without planting on it? I guess that's
yeah. So this is showcasing that here. So these look to be kind of like suspended cables, basically, where these vines are going to grow. Jeff,
I'd like the architects to confirm.
Yeah, so there's a horizontal bar up at the top of the vines that hangs down on just a few minimal cables. And then below that, you get cables that are spaced a little bit tighter together to make sure there's enough for the vines to grow on. So there's no sort of heavy mesh there. It's light cables.
Just vertical cables?
Yeah, just vertical.
Thanks.
And continuing on, you see images of the top floor over here. This kind of, again, interior to the space itself, these visual images here and this refuge. So these legends showing, where those images are directing towards. So, and then you obviously have your planting legend, which just kind of showcases, the species of trees that are going to be planted on the site. So I can go the right-hand side. Yeah, I can zoom in and showcase, they are utilizing a majority of native species within their planting schedule. So one there. So kind of moving again throughout the site, they're indicating again this kind of ground cover spacing, ground cover material, as well as this tree material that they're going to be using throughout it. And then again, they replicate this at the second floor level. So again, providing this kind of planting palette that you see on this right-hand side here, and then showcasing that at the second floor refuge area. This is L2.2 in your plan set. So similar to most other projects, we receive also these images of what the, example images of what the trees are going to look like, so that we get a good reference of the kind of, pigmentation we would also be experiencing when we try to introduce maybe not just only green, but also different kind of colors within that kind of landscape plan to kind of make the space a little bit more vibrant, and also give context to what we would really be expecting within this space for the planting material proposed. So in L3.1 just kind of gets to their lighting legend, where they're showing primarily along this side over here that they're just going to be these kind of pathway lights closest to over, near the creek area. They show these festoon lights over here. Again, these kind of up lights towards the trees or angled towards the trees, and these parking lot lights that you see is these kind of images here. Continue on to L3.2, similar space doing similar diagram indicating what is occurring at the second floor level too on this exterior refuge space. So again, they're calling out these kind of lighting fixtures in their legend over here. So this is L3.2, and L3.3 just kind of gives a number of details basically of the material of the light poles and the materials that they're going to be using, the light fixtures. And L3.4 indicates the lighting requirements that we have or
That,
provide.
I think that printed for us.
It did? Okay.
Yeah, L3.3 and 3.4 printed.
Okay. L4.1 print.
No.
Okay, well, this is the irrigation legend and water efficiency landscape worksheet that they have provided. So here on the right-hand side, they provide their table, which identifies, what they're trying to achieve in terms of their water efficiency. And then within the site plan, it tries to identify where areas are drip irrigation and or bubbler watering tubes for the landscaping and the trees.
I think there's 2 more pages after that that didn't print. And then I think that's it. Actually,
so 4.2 does a similar setup with the drip irrigation being called out here within this planter strip that they have at this refuge area, the 2nd floor. And L5.0 talks about the amount of cubic foot of soil provided for each of these species, for each of these trees at the ground floor level. So one comment that Urban Forestry had communicated with the applicant was regarding, providing enough soil space for these trees to be able to grow to a mature height. So Urban Forestry worked with the applicant to, identify some of this information. Okay. And the rest is just the tree protection worksheets. So did these print for you all?
TO3 didn't, but the other 2 did.
Okay, TO3 just kind of replicates this kind of site parking lot shading legend. So.
All right, thank you for going through that with us.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry again that it didn't print. I wish I had a good excuse for why it didn't seem to do what it needed to do. So we did have, just to say to that, we were communicating with the applicant to try to get a plan set that they delivered. There was some snafu with the delivery itself, where USPS was saying it was going to come, and then they said, oh, we can meet with somebody. So they brought the plans back to the historic USPS building, and when Vin had gone to collect them, they had said that they were delivered again, and so it kind of got lost in some weird limbo somewhere. So we ended up printing the plan sets in this instance. So it sounds like there was a printing error, unfortunately.
I think so long as the information is in the public record, like part of the official input, I think that is comforting to see. Okay. I guess I'll move on to my comments. I'll try to keep them brief because I know we're going to go on time. Wanted to thank the applicant for their updates, at least the ones they made. The operable windows, I think, are a really great addition and will be great for the project. For the wall against the substation, I think it's still a bit lacking for me. I understand that some effort has been made, and I think the addition of the windows will be nice for the interior experience. As far as the exterior experience, right now the renderings are kind of showing that fence of the substation looking kind of plain. And when I went there on site, that fence is actually really interesting. There's like really cool block, like lettuce fencing with a really intricate design. And I think, it seems like they put a lot of effort into this fence here, and the wall itself kind of pales, I think, in comparison. That's just, I understand a little effort has been made, but for me, it's not enough. And then for the extension of the steel, I think I mentioned this last time, but I have a hard time somehow justifying it. It seems like a strange piece to extend out. It doesn't seem to serve, I understand the purpose of serving it as shades, but aesthetically when the shades are up, it just looks a little strange. But for the rest of it, I think, the proportions of the other trellises that you have on the site look really nice. I like the color of the material for the soffit. So I really appreciate that. The fencing on the refuge area, I kind of agree with board member Balti a little bit more on that one. The fence is still a little bit lacking for me still. The spacing helps a little bit, but I don't know that it provides as much visual interest. It's certainly better than what was there in front of us before. But yeah, it definitely, especially with the fence, I mean, not that that fence that's in front of the substation is like the best fence ever. It's not, but it is interesting. It's like, it kind of provides something visually interesting there. And if you haven't gone out there and seen it, then I recommend that you do. So that's the majority of my comments. I'll bring it back to the board if there wants to be any discussion or if someone wants to make a motion. Any thoughts?
Osma, could I ask the architect to confirm, please? They're putting 2 windows in the wall of the building facing the power station. Those windows are essentially at the property line. Architect Galbraith, have you guys confirmed that you can actually do that, some sort of fire glazing?
So yes, they would have to be fiberglass. So they would technically be a transparent wall that has a 1-hour rating.
I understand. So to staff, it's important that they said you can do the window now. So later on, when it's technically challenging, they committed to this. I'm sure Ken will stand by his word.
Entrapment.
Just checking. Thank you.
I have a question. I note that one of the parking structures is foundation wall is really right up against the creek edge. Have you looked into that to make sure that there's no problem coming that close to the creek edge at that point?
Yes, we have. We actually did extensive work on that with the board that's responsible for the creek. And what we have to do basically is extend the foundations deep enough that we avoid any surcharge loads against that wall. That's how it will be constructed.
Do we have any support from the board in terms of board member Lou's comment about shielding the creek from light?
No, I do not. I'm sorry, but in this case, I don't think that's a reasonable requirement. Sorry, Alex.
Well, why don't maybe the staff could tell us what the requirements are for light spills?
Yeah, so for lighting, 182330 is what regulates lighting on commercial properties. And what it identifies is that for light that spills over property towards residential properties, it can't exceed a 0.5 foot candle. So at the moment, this obviously faces or fronts towards the creek, and in their photometrics, they do identify it's about 0.56, if I remember correctly, looking at kind of that rough edge over there. But the code is specific again to when it spills over onto residential properties. We generally try to keep obviously that in mind, that we're not trying to then just create signal lights, that kind of blare off toward any of these things. We did include a condition of approval that identifies that lighting between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. needs or should be reduced basically to anything that's only needed for security purposes. And because this is an office building, it's very unlikely that people are really going to be operating anything during that time, except for maybe some maintenance staff that might pass through, or maybe security staff that might pass through the space, rather than someone who's actively utilizing the space throughout that full time frame.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So board member Lou, in terms of your comment, would you still want to support protecting light off of that edge?
No, only if there was a code issue.
Yeah, currently our code doesn't really anticipate that commercial to commercial interaction. It really just anticipates commercial to residential interactions in terms of light spillover, unfortunately.
I'd like to comment on what Ozma was saying about the extension of the steel structure. I find that to be an interesting method of kind of enclosing the space by providing that extension to the perimeter. At first, I questioned kind of the use of the solar, of the shading device, because I wonder if that, you know, really takes care of all sun angles into the building. But I have to trust that you've thought that one through somehow to look at it with solar angles. Clearly, that's a very glassy corner, and what will that be like on the inside, you know, when their sun is shining in that vicinity? But I do like the idea of a structure enclosing. I mean, you give examples of some other areas where I guess perhaps you have used that technique of extending the structure, but I'm particularly partial to it as a defining element without it having a roof on it that defines that outdoor space.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if I might be on my own in terms of some of those comments, which is fine. I mean, this is a democracy in that way. Yeah, I mean, would anybody like to make a motion? Anybody?
Happy to make the motion. I move that we approve this project in its entirety in all of its detail.
Is there a second? I don't hear a second.
Alex, did you have any support for my idea of changing that privacy fencing in the front to be like the other fence, more of a vine screen? I didn't hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, I don't think that I have an opinion on that one, on this one.
We're kind of two.
Yeah, I don't really see anything in the code that would say which one way or the other.
I'll second the motion.
Are there any other friendly amendments? Nope. Okay, let's do a vote.
Okay, Board Member Bolte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lee is absent. Board Member Liu,
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 4-0 with Vice Chair Lee absent.
Thank you all very much for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to thank one comment. I want to thank Garrett. I thought that you add whatever you added there. It's been an excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm afraid I need to step out of the meeting at this point, if that's okay.
Sure.
I have somebody waiting for me now.
Yeah.
I'll have to pick up on what this last item is, and I do support the minutes the way they're presented, so everything is fine. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Board Member Bolte. Okay, our next item is the ARB work plan and annual report.
I have a brief PowerPoint. Let me upload that. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Thank you. So the work plan. The ARB is accustomed to doing an annual report, which is different than this work plan that was outlined in the handbook Council prepared. and that we had to hustle to get a work plan to meet the council's agenda that is this Monday coming up, reviewing all of the work plans of the city's boards and commissions. So basically, Jody put this together with the handbook template that was there. It asks that we prepare a work plan by the second quarter each calendar year. And here we are at the end of the second quarter. And the plans have certain components that we may or may not have hit for this year's, but again, the rush to get everything done. We'll have much more ample time next year to hit all these things. In any case, the council will be reviewing the plans on Monday and providing feedback. Again, more so next year when folks have more time to prepare these. And there is an agenda item 17 for Monday, the 21st, and I have the link at the bottom of this screen if anyone wants to capture that. The council could refer additional items to the ARB if they get around to doing that on Monday. Again, I think we're at the early stage of this new process. Then the idea is that the ARB will work on these items in the fiscal year, and then if new items arise, the ARB can amend the plan. So the differences between the ARB report and the council work plan are, we have these bylaws that say we do this, the annual report, and also in the municipal code, it talks about this, that we're basically raising issues or concerns up to the council, and actually even the planning commission for certain items of the city's plans, policies, ordinances, and procedures as these affect the projects that the board reviews. So that's the point of the annual report. And then the council's work plan is where we're setting activities that we anticipate doing in the coming year. Of course, the ARB is mostly catching projects that come through, but we do have some work, such as the objective standards that was tackled over this last fiscal year. So the discussion about maybe merging the timeline of the ARB annual report with the work plan report in the spring of next year, and bylaws change, it can be discussed at a later date, but that's an option. So anyhow, the work plan that's in the council packet for Monday has this content talking about the general purposes of the ARB. Again, it's straight from the code. That's what we do. Harmonious, orderly development, desirability of investment and such, promoting visual environments, etc. This is the chart that appears in the work plan. So it's pretty brief. It's basically, review of the projects. There's kind of a placeholder here for, actually, I should say that this plan did not appear in the council staff report for Monday. We are going to have an at places memo that will include this for Monday. So we have an opportunity to fill this in and anything else that should be desired to put on our work plan. In general, reviewing projects, implementing comprehensive plan policies and programs. The objective standards was, a big deal that we did this year. And we're still kind of in it. There's a few more follow-up items with the graphics for those objective standards. And then that goes through, it did pass through the Planning and Transportation Commission and is going up to council. Then we have the ARB awards. We talked about that earlier. Generally, the bylaws say every 5 years. We skipped 2020 due to the COVID circumstances. That's a fun activity that we can embark upon in the fall this year or even summer. And then updating the bylaws, which to coincide with these latest changes from the council based on the handbook. Okay, and then I grabbed a bunch of comprehensive plan, land use, and community design policies in case anybody is interested in discussing, if there's anything specific that the ARB is considering tackling. I wasn't sure if this had come up in an earlier discussion with the board. Maybe Jody was aware of that, but I had not studied what you all had discussed when the handbook was discussed. So So with that, I can leave this up, or do we still have a quorum, by the way? I had thought I heard David had to leave.
No,
Not me.
David's
No.
David's still here. There's a quorum. There's three of us still.
Oh, and Jody is here. Hi, Jody.
Good morning.
So she's coming in from a vacation. Jody, so I don't know if there was a plan for that blank spot about the comprehensive plan policies, but I took the liberty of going and grabbing several of those policies in case the conversation took a path in that direction.
Yes, so
if you'd like
I
to
did
take
just
over, you're welcome to.
okay. I am joining from vacation, but just wanted to make sure that I knew what was going on for the year to come. Regarding the comprehensive plan, though, I don't know that we've had a deep conversation about that. I think board member Lou was talking about some, comp plan policies earlier in the meeting. And so maybe there are a few that we want to focus on. And I saw, Amy, that you had some slides related to that. So as the board wishes, we could go through those. But I'll, Chair, if you want to take it from here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so the work plan was on packet page 124. And actually, Amy, if you could put up just that,
Sure. Yep.
That little chart.
The chart. Yep.
So yeah,
Can
I
everyone
guess.
see that?
Yeah, and I can go through this if you'd like. So, obviously the first item is just review of projects that we do on a normal basis. So that's ongoing. I'll skip past the comprehensive plan for a second. The objective standards, the ARB has done the bulk of the work on this. There's just the ad hoc committee reviewing the graphics. And then it'll go on to council, hopefully for approval in August. So that seems fairly straightforward. I don't know if anyone has questions on that. Otherwise, okay. The ARB awards, as Amy mentioned, we postponed those because of the pandemic, but we will pick that up. And actually, that's what I've been doing in the background this morning. Is collecting all of those addresses, because it is it's the items that have actually been built and are up and running between 2015 and 2020. Those are the ones that would be eligible for an ARB award. And so I'm pulling together that initial list so that we can start to go through those. So we may want to set sort of a retreat time for that. And then lastly, the bylaws, there are obviously some changes that are needed because of the handbook, but then we can also talk about, do we want to merge this sort of council work plan along with the annual report? Amy was rightfully suggesting that maybe we do that next year.
Yeah, I think the annual report is now kind of integrated into the bylaws, if I remember right.
I think right this second, the only thing that we're giving council what you have before you is really just a look forward. We haven't done the look backwards, which is usually what our annual report is. So we'll still want to do that look backwards, and then maybe in 2022, we can sort of blend the two together. There wasn't time. There was a pretty quick turnaround this year, so.
And certainly, I think the ARB annual report that we've been accustomed to preparing is one of those items that we do, in advance of a retreat, a joint meeting with the ARB and council. So I haven't heard, Jody, whether there's a meeting scheduled for 2021, but it's possible since everything is changing and we're going to be, coming back into the office in August. So I imagine that there'll be an opportunity to discuss the backward look with that report with the council.
And maybe Amy, in our at places memo, is that something we can ask for when that sort of joint hearing would happen?
I don't think we'd put it in the memo, but we can certainly flag it, that John, our director, can, seek out in his meetings with the executive leadership, the timing on the joint meetings, if those are going to resume this calendar year.
I guess, can we dive into the comprehensive plan line item
Yes.
a little bit, and then maybe we'll go around the board and just
Sure.
get any feedback after that?
Shall I show these? I just grabbed these from the land use community design policies. If there's just a handful here from that element of the comprehensive plan. Does that help?
Yeah, because I think we can't, I mean, we're always focused on the comp plan in general, but I think this line item is maybe if there's something more specific that we want to focus on. In the past, we had focused on sort of pedestrian access and walkability and making sure that there were benches and places to sit down. Do we, in the objective standards, I think we tried to write some of that information down. So is there something like that that we want to do in this coming year?
I'll show the next one.
Clarification.
I mean, for instance, here's a program related to a policy on bird-friendly design. If the ARB wanted to take on that as a project, that would be an example of something. Generally we have consultants helping where we've been slim with the budget lately, but in any case, the ARB, a subcommittee or something could take something like that on. Or here's another one that's a program that talks about modifying design standards. So to that extent, we are doing that with the objective standards when it involves housing.
No, this is really helpful. Okay, why don't we go around the board and get any feedback on the work plan? We'll start with board member Lou.
Sure. So I think in the past, other board members have mentioned updating the South El Camino design guidelines. I think Grace had mentioned that one. And then I think also other board members have mentioned writing a separate set of guidelines for San Antonio Road because of the recent zoning change to allow housing in there.
Sorry, that was the San Antonio guidelines, and then you mentioned another set of guidelines.
The South El Camino design guidelines.
South El Camino. Is that something you're thinking to take on this year?
Not necessarily. I'm just throwing that out there. It's been mentioned before. We've had retreats talking about El Camino before, I think on multiple occasions, but the board has never really been able to come to consensus about what to do. Yeah, so that's what I've got.
Okay. Board member Hirsch?
I'm wondering how the state policies requiring greater density in housing is going to impact our comp plan, or will it impact our comp plan? Will it impact the local height limitation of 50 feet? And these policies, of course, are very general, but what will happen when there's a requirement to provide much greater housing? And in fact, is that impact in Ventura going to be felt in Ventura? I mean, we haven't really had a look at that whole plan, or I guess we should. But
I can jump in just a bit to say, the housing element working group has been kicked off and is going full speed, and there's going to be lots happening there. That's part of the comprehensive plan, the housing element. So to the extent that sites are selected through that process, and those are shared through the community up through council over this next couple year period, there'll be opportunities to learn about that and weigh in related to that. So just put a pin in that.
That's true.
And I would agree with Amy that the main part of that is going to happen through the housing element, but maybe in our memo, we can say that the ARB would like to be involved in, height increases and helping to craft those.
Yeah, typically with the housing element, then, there's legislation that comes after that to, implement housing element policies that come about through that process. So that, to the extent that that might alter the zoning code and the development standards, et cetera, that would be involvement with the Planning and Transportation Commission and ARB for sure.
So I mean, the question that I'm asking is, I can understand that, yes, it is going to be an issues for the housing work plan. Will that translate to a sort of a granularity way that the comp plan deals with the particular surroundings? And what assurance do we have that it would?
You mean using our objective standards? Or separately from that?
Yes. Not our objective standards, but the various aspects of the comp plan are dealing with the environmental impact of the buildings adjacent to them, to spaces, et cetera. I'm just wondering how this is a planning exercise, is it not? How to and where to increase density if necessary in order to provide for the huge amount of housing that the state is requiring the state in.
So yes, the increase in housing, the RHNA numbers that the state is asking us to accommodate, the council is going to have to wrestle with that, and that is not a small topic. And yes. So how that conversation is going to evolve, we don't know yet, because it could happen in 100 different manners. The comp plan does allow for higher densities in certain areas. Council may want to expand that, or the comp plan might be okay as is, and they just need to change zoning regulations. I mean, those are the answers we don't have right now because we're just barely starting that conversation. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say, I think it's just good to note that the ARB would, like to be involved in the conversation.
Yes, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, that would be good. Just had a question for this work plan. Staff is asking us to kind of recommend approval for it today. Is that right?
Yes, we do need approval today because this needs to go on to council for Monday. There was a really quick turnaround.
Yeah.
With the note that changes can happen later, right? That's yes. An option.
Yeah, I kind of regret that we're missing 2 board members, and this is kind of our work plan, but it does seem like it is time sensitive. And so I think, yeah, with the note that we can make revisions potentially at our retreat. I can't make July 15th, by the way, so the retreat might need to move to August. But I think in general, this is a good overview of what we're planning to do. The comprehensive plan, I I don't like that there's a question mark in the description for the programs, but I think it makes sense given that we haven't defined what all the programs are that we're interested in. But I think discussing those items, Amy, that you had up, like bird-friendly design, I think is interesting, especially like I was walking through downtown on University Avenue yesterday and just to see, how Uplift has kind of changed the architecture of that street. It's very pedestrian. It's so very pedestrian friendly now, much more than it's ever been. And the small scale stuff semi-temporary stuff that the restaurants and shops have put out in front have added to the granularity, and I think they've added to the pedestrian experience. As far as the architecture, I think it'd be great, at least as part of our retreat, to kind of talk about how we can keep that abreast, and also if if there are some ideas by council about, I don't know if they're planning to keep what's happening on CalAd and on University, to keep it going, just because it's so cool. Like, it's really changed our landscape. If we as the Architecture Review Board can kind of help facilitate some of the improvements that are going to be happening to that area. So that's kind of what I was thinking on a comprehensive plan.
And I think, Chair, if you want, as Amy said, we do still have time to make some edits to this. We can take the question mark out, but maybe what we add in is that, that we're going to explore what policies the ARB would focus on, and we can explore those, in the first quarter. And then we would be able to update the work plan after that.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah. The work plan is we study first. That's the line item, is to study what we can study further. Cool. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I had a question for staff. So in the report, it said that the work plan should include information about equity in the work. And I know the council has been discussing that a lot, like, for example, like with the selection of the housing element working group. I was wondering what we do about that, and also if there was any thought about just maybe like measuring the amount of community engagement that we have on projects, or even like a follow-up survey. Like sometimes, like if you buy something online, you're going to get some sort of request to do a survey. That if we have something like that, so that we get some sort of feedback. It seems to me that's what some of the council members are kind of interested in. So I think maybe we might want to just mention that. Obviously, like ARB is different than some of the other boards, but it seems like the council is interested in engagement with the public.
So I know that some council members were talking about equity, and some of it was just sort of equity and participation. And what I think I heard at least some council members saying is that we may continue this sort of call-in Zoom ability for public participants. Maybe not for staff, maybe not for board members, but at least for the public to be able to call in. So maybe the ARB wants to put their support behind something like that. I mean, as far as equity, there could be a change in the bylaws to, make sure there's diversity on the board, but that probably is something more that comes from council. And the surveys would, again, it takes staff time and money and things like that. It's a great idea, but it's something that we would need to ask council about.
Okay, sounds about right. Okay, so are we, if we're done, I can make a motion. Right now,
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we adopt the staff's proposed work plan. Right, and then I think we had the final, with one addition, which was to, under the comprehensive plan, is to add that we will explore which existing comp plan policies to pursue further for next year.
I second that. Any discussion before we go for the vote? Nothing? Okay, go ahead, Vin. Let's vote.
Okay, Board Member Balte is absent. Board Member Hirsch. Board Member Hirsch.
He's on mute.
Unmute. Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
I had to stop the dog from barking here.
Vice Chair Lee is also absent. Board Member Liu.
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 3-0 with 2 board members absent.
Great, thank you. All right, our next item is the approval of the meeting minutes for April 15th.
If I may, I'm going to go back on vacation.
Thank you so much,
Oh,
Jody.
wow.
Thank you.
Go
Take
have
care.
fun.
Bye-bye.
Any comments, or can we do a motion on the minutes for April 15th?
I actually didn't read the minutes, but I will make a motion that we approve them for April 15th.
Second.
Motion by Liz, second by Hirsch. Let's do a vote.
Board Member Hirsch.
Yes.
Board Member Liu.
Yes.
Chair Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 3-0 with 2 board members absent.
Thank you. And then the last item is if there are any board member question, comments, announcements, and I have NVCAP under here.
So the council met on Monday. And so what they did is, so they took a lot of public comments. I think there were 22 public speakers. And they debated quite a number of the issues. And so what they ended up doing is closing the hearing without taking any action. And then they're basically going to reopen another hearing in the fall. So they didn't actually continue it because that'll give them a little bit more flexibility. And it was a unanimous vote of like 7-0 to rehear the project in the fall. Yeah, so that's all that I have for that one. And I think it's an interesting project, and it's gonna get hashed out. It's gonna get hashed out eventually. If you guys have been following projects, there are a couple more projects that are happening. So like there are 2 new houses with ADUs and JADUs that have been submitted within the Ventura plan area. So the property owners are starting to submit projects before the plan is being finished. So it's all very crazy.
Alex, I have a question for Alex.
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you support 3B?
Oh, yeah, I have not, I did not, so
You didn't vote, right?
that, I did not recommendation, mostly because we have projects coming before the board.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't seem right to say that I prefer one thing, and then we've got projects coming, because then it would be, you have a perception that it bias the project.
Mhm.
So so I abstained from making a recommendation, as did the planning commissioner, who's on the working group. So yeah.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. So just stay tuned. Nothing's gonna. I think nothing's happening while the council's away on break.
Sure. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else.
Ozma,
Mhm.
we should set a date to talk to each other, because we have to look at the latest
Designs.
objective standards
Yeah, that's right. I saw.
privately.
We got a note with the updated graphics for the objective standards. And so we have to take a look at that and give our feedback. And yeah, let's plan to do that. What day is it? It's Thursday. Maybe this weekend or early, or maybe next week sometime.
Okay.
We can do that. Yeah. Okay, well, we have an ad hoc committee that's after this, which is with me and board member Hirsch. So we will stay on, but for everybody else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sam, are you our contact for this ad hoc committee?
Yes.
Is the applicant going to be joining us?
Yes, I believe Randy Pop is monitoring and might be joining right now. I saw him earlier, but I wasn't keeping track of all the participants. Let's see. Yeah, it's only us right now. Maybe he lost connection.
Oh no.
Yeah. Up
Oh,
there.
there he is.
Yeah. There we go.
Hello, Mr. Pop. Can you hear
Turn
us
your-
okay?
I can,
Bob.
thank you.
Randy.
Randy, please.
I've been referring to all my board members with their last name, so I've been.
In the handbook, that's what you're supposed to do now. But it doesn't tell you how you have to address me, so I prefer to just be Randy.
Sure thing.
Hey, you.
All right,
Okay.
so, Sam, I sent a note, but I didn't check. Are you sharing the drawings or am I?
I could, or you can, whatever.
I'd prefer it if it's okay with you.
Sure, that's fine. If
Okay,
you have them ready to go.
I do. Okay. So this is the package that you were all given, and, just to remind all of us, I think, your hope had been that I would share with you a detailed description of any changes that had occurred since the approval had been granted. And I think there was a concern that because of the changes in the garage, there was a domino effect up into the building. And, I apologize. I think maybe I misspoke, or it didn't translate properly, but in the staff report, it says there are no changes, and that's not actually accurate. There are definitely some changes, but there are no significant changes that are in a way that I would describe materially changing the design. They're very subtle refinements that occurred as a result of interactions with the neighbor. Some very simple things that have happened as a result of interaction with the structural engineer, and then just further coordination. As I tell my clients all the time, when we are finished with the architectural review board process, I typically project us to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% complete with the design development process, 75% with the design development process, somewhere in there. And so there's always a little bit of interior tweaking that goes on the building And I want to just take you through those. I think the drawing set that Sam delivered to you was the clean set. Is that right, Sam?
It's the set that you emailed me.
Yeah. So what I did is I had prepared actually, just for Sam's benefit and my own, a quick summary that kind of goes through each of these sheets, and I've highlighted any areas that are really different. And I want to just be transparent about that and show you exactly what I had been looking at. So, you know, the major change that occurred in the overall design is that we removed the boardroom from this corner and the fitness room that was above it from being on the frontage glass. We've had a lot of feedback from hotel groups and others saying that they thought that it would be really undesirable to have those at those locations and that we should move them away. And so in response, what we did is we created a sculptural stair at that corner and have altered the upstairs a bit to be a room. And in sort of a three-dimensional view, we provided this information so you could see what that stair is starting to look like. Obviously, we haven't finished all of the detailing of it, but it's intended to be a very open and transparent stair. It will have some glass railing. It will be elegant, in keeping with the character of a five-star boutique hotel. But the thought was that as you look through the glass, what you'd see inside is the stair at that point. But the organization of the glass, the size of the openings, all of those things has not changed from the original design that you approved. It's just a matter of an interior alteration. And so I think maybe this is the easiest way to do it. If this is too distracting to have these highlights, I'm happy to go back to the set that's more plain, but I just thought it would be simple if I just took you through it this way. So you can see down below, right? We've got an X brace frame. The structural engineer has said that's not capable of working for us in the way it needs to. So we're changing that to a V brace. Over on this side, and this is true in a number of locations, balconies have been converted to just be a panel in front of an opening. It's not an occupiable space. In this particular location, it's happening for code compliance because of access to the transformer and access to the trash and other things that city departments have told us they need in that area. So they're asking us to take away the balcony in that location. You'll see in some other locations they've been taken away because our neighbors at the Palo Alto Redwoods were very concerned about having people out on their balconies and making noise and having visual access. And so in response to their very strong requests, we have backed away from that, and I'll show you some of those. So moving around the building then, this is the side of the building that faces the Palo Alto Redwoods pool. If you're facing the front of the building, this is the right-hand side. And again, you can see, and I apologize for my spelling error, the code required change to this particular balcony here. You can see that we've added a panel at this window, and we just thought aesthetically that around the top of the building that made sense. When you look at the interior courtyard now, so this is the corner of the building where the stair is, and this face of the building is very far back. All of these balconies have been changed to panels. The neighbors were very concerned about having those be balconies.
Is this like a Juliet balcony where the window's still open?
Yeah, you could, I think there are a lot of different interpretations of what a Juliet balcony is, but for me, what this means is that we're gonna have a panel that's about 4 inches projecting off the building. You'll be able to open the doors, but there's not even a floor there, right? A Juliet balcony often is thought of as, just being very shallow. This is not occupiable. This is a panel that would prevent you from falling out of an opening, but it allows you to open a door. And from the interior, you can have something that looks like a door.
Okay, so it looks like a door on the inside if you just open it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can. I mean, if I
I got you.
If I zoom in really close, right, you can see that there's a door behind these.
Yeah.
But it's a panel. Okay, are my drawings legible on your screen? I have one of these giant screens, and I always worry people can't see what I'm looking at. So if
So
you
far, so
when
good.
I'm showing, just stop me and I'll zoom in for you. And then, sort of the significant change, but completely internal to our project, right? Not visible from the exterior in any way, is we changed the massing at this corner, where previously we had an exit stair that was coming down. We've changed that to be the meeting room, so that the meeting room space now occurs here. And I'll show you that floor plan in just a moment. Working our way around the building, this is, yeah, okay, so this is, this is what I would describe as the left-hand side facing the Juliana Lee building. So again, these changes all occurred as a result of the neighbor input. We still have balconies on most of these openings. And this one change that occurred here as a result of some internal room reconfiguration, as we removed the fitness room from the upstairs and adjusted that spacing and took accounting of where the clearance height needed to be in order to get the ramp to work down into the basement. We adjusted some things around, relocating a room internally. And so because we moved a hotel room, sort of underneath and inside, there's a very subtle reconfiguration of the windows, you can see. Moving to the back of the building now, again, this is the side I consider to be most sensitive to the neighbors. There's a subtle stair change, right? The stair was over here previously and it's shifted over to here now. We've removed a window that was in this location. We reconfigured these windows that were here to just be very small openings that are up high on the wall and don't provide much visual access, and they'll be obscure anyway. And then in order to still promote sort of light and character inside those rooms, we wanted to have some tall windows, as we do in all the other rooms of the hotel, but we tucked them behind the tree so that they really don't have any kind of a view. And I'll remind you that you can see it a little bit here, but there is a roughly 11 or 12 foot high fence that surrounds the property that we have committed to keeping. It's a completely non-conforming fence. You're not allowed to have a fence at that height in Palo Alto at all, but somehow that got built around the Palo Alto redwoods, and we have agreed that they can keep that. It helped with privacy, so that's a good thing. So just working our way through the floor plans, I won't compare garage to garage because you've done that in detail already. I just noted that the stair was added where where the boardroom was previously. We relocated our fitness room to this location so that it'll have visual access out to the backyard. You can open windows so that you can get a little fresh air in there. It should be nice. And then this is the other change, is that the meeting room has been relocated back to this corner where previously it was a hotel room. It was a small king suite. And beyond that, there's not really much of an adjustment, but I did include a red dashed line around this to sort of show you how the profile of the building from the 522 to now has adjusted. Similarly, and I described this earlier, right? There was a very subtle profile change. This was the old profile when we had the fitness room out here at the Porte Cochere, and the building was out here. This piece is still in the same location, but the building has pulled back over the ramp. So no change to the windows, no change to anything other than just sort of pushing a plane of the wall back underneath the Porte Cochere, behind and inside. It's essentially not visible in any way. And then the meeting room roof that's over on this side. As we go up to level 3 and then on to, sorry, my machine's a little slow. Level 4 and 5, you'll see there are no other changes proposed to the floor plan or the exterior at those places. And just sort of confirming the roof plan layout, of course, is maturing and replacing the photovoltaics and the actual equipment and other things. And so that's all adjusting, but in general, the profile of the roof has not changed in any way. So, dialogue here, whatever is helpful to you. Tell me where you'd like to go or what you'd like to see.
That was very thorough.
Is there any
for me.
concern?
That was very thorough for me. I had a chance to also look at your plan in depth. All right, David, did you want to go first?
Well, I only have a small question, I guess, is could you discuss where that stair lands when it goes down to the garage?
Of course. So here's that stair, right? You enter the stair here in the garage, migrate over, go up a landing, then come up this direction. And then as you arrive at the upper level, you land here.
Okay, so that stair then really is a kind of an internal stair for personnel, not really people who are, anybody who's dropping off their car is going to take an elevator.
Likely. I mean, it's Palo Alto. People use the stairs often. And, this one's a little bit unwieldy because it is a triple turn, right? You go up, back, and then up. But it's certainly available for people, but I think most will take the elevator.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, orient you properly?
Yeah, I so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually okay. I looked at it. I appreciate how thorough you were just now highlighting all the stuff. I had to look for it on the plans, but no, this is really great. I really appreciate that you guys have taken our feedback into account.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know me, I believe in this process. It's okay.
You've been here and done this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it adds great value. I don't mind having a bunch of expert critics helping to make the project better.
I have one other one for you. There's this meeting room now that you have that's really a kind of more outside than it is.
I'm sorry, hang on a second. Let me get there while we're talking about it.
Yeah. That meeting room, right? You're there. So you get to that by sort of circuitously through the corridors, et cetera here. But is it also accessible from outside? Is that the way it's going to be?
Absolutely. And, I will say, I don't know that we've entirely resolved this yet. Interior access would come from the lobby, down the hallway, and into the meeting room. Exterior access right now is a pair of doors that are at the end here. And I've had discussions with our group about potentially opening up this side of the building instead, because my focus is all toward minimizing the projection of noise. And I was imagining that if you had a meeting, or if you were having an event in there of, it's not much of an event room, but if you had an event there of some scale, you were having amplified music as part of a presentation or something, and you had those doors open, they'll project towards the redwoods. Where if we had doors on this side, it would only project toward the courtyard. And so I think ultimately we may end up having some doors on this side of the building as well, in which case you would leave the lobby and be able to go right into the meeting room. But that's the kind of subtle adjustment that I was hopeful that we would rely on staff to manage and approve.
Of course.
But up to you, whatever you prefer.
I think your direction is correct anyhow.
Yeah, I don't think it makes too much. Yeah, I mean, if you guys are okay to move the doors, I don't know that we have much jurisdiction over that. But I think it makes sense if that's a change you guys are thinking of making.
Okay. So any concerns at this point? Or are we able to approve and move forward?
I'm good. Yeah.
I'm good.
Great. Sam, you good?
Yeah, sounds good to me. We'll talk more about that door placement, later in plan check, but I think it's like, as Board Member Hirsch said, Chair Thompson,
it's such a
minor thing.
Subtle thing.
It's a minor thing. Yeah.
It's very minor, and it makes more sense programmatically, like you said, Randy, to face it towards the courtyard. It's kind of off to the side. So
it just depends on how that how that impacts the landscape design, and so I just want to be cognizant of that. But I don't have enough data yet to make that decision.
Sure. Yep, I think we're good
I
to
have
go.
one other comment to make, and that is, I'm glad to hear that, Randy, you're reaching out to the Redwoods to try to resolve some of these issues as you move forward, because there definitely will be affected, and their interests are. So I think you probably have salved some of the objections that they had to the whole project by doing this, and it's a good thing to continue.
Well, we're not completely in a public hearing here, but because this is a public process, I will share that we have had, significant outreach, and we have made immense effort to try and hear them and resolve their concerns. I don't think, we've done everything they had asked us to necessarily, but some of the asks were big and we couldn't. But I think that honestly, working through this process with all of you in a public forum and having the ability to hear them and hear your concerns about the design as well has really helped us to get to the place we are now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hey, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate your presentation, Randy, and those extra highlighted items. That really helped.
You bet. Anytime. I know you could have done it, but
I actually missed a couple of those things, but they were very
I
small.
did too. Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
I'm kind of in it,
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Good lunch.
Yeah.
It's lunchtime.
Bye.
It's closed, eh, Ozma?
Yes.
Meeting closed.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.